Chapter 1254. Chen Zhao pointed at Lingam, lightning flashing on his fingertips. Lingam trembled like a sieve. Wait! Lingam finally yelled. I'll trade something for my life. What? The Devil's Grimoire, Lingam exclaimed. The Devil's Grimoire passed down through my family. What? President, the Demon Bible is a magic book that borrows demonic power, but it doesn't record it. Instead, it records all kinds of methods to borrow demonic power, Alice said. In the Dark Age, many royals and nobles were related to demons. Some of the families that have survived to this day have the Demon Bible. Oh, are there many Demon Bible? Not many, but it's not unique, Alice answered. Where's it? Take it out. It's not with me. It's in my family. Lingam looked at Chen Zhao in fear. I can give it to you. No need. Ask your family to bring it. Don't tell me you can't take it out without it, Chen Zhao said. There's nothing that can't be explained with a phone call. If there is, then 2 calls. Lingam lowered his head, his eyes flickering. Okay, I'll call. Give him his number, Chen Zhao said. Lingam held the phone and dialed a number. Grandpa, it's me. What's up? A stern voice came from the other end. Grandpa, I did something wrong and was detained by the supernatural organization. They want me to trade the Demon Bible for me. Okay, give me the address. Lingam's grandfather didn't refuse or agree. Instead, he asked for the address. However, Lingam could hear the anger in that calm tone. His family wasn't powerful. After all, the ability to change one's appearance couldn't bring them actual power. Lingam's father was the leader of the family, but his power was average. Lingam's grandfather, Offit, was different. Offit was the owner of the demonic grimoire, and the only one in the family who could use the contents of the demonic grimoire. Also, Offit controlled a terrifying organization. Lingam had been afraid of his grandfather since he was young. It wasn't just him. Although Offit wasn't the leader, he was better than him. Even his father acted like a grandson in front of Offit. My grandpa wants the address. Lingam looked at Chen Zhao. Give me the phone. Chen Zhao took the phone. Hello, sir. How are you? Who are you in the supernatural organization? Guild leader. The Lin family changed into my appearance and killed people on the street. I wanted to kill him, but he said that you have some Demon Bible. So, either you use the Demon Bible to exchange for his life, or I'll chop him up and feed him to the dogs. That's right, Chen Zhao said. Address. Chen Zhao could tell that the old man's tone was rather unfriendly, but he didn't care. If this old man wanted to use force, he would let him reunite with his grandson. After Offit hung up the phone, she nodded. Supernatural organization. Offit had heard of the supernatural organization before. But in the supernatural world, the supernatural organization had never had a strong presence. Offit picked up the phone and dialed a number. Rooney, gather everyone and come to me. It didn't take long for Offit's subordinates to assemble. Boss Offit, is there another mission? Boss Offit, we've been idle for half a year. Where are we going this time? I hope it's Egypt. Last time we failed. This time, after half a year of preparation, we definitely won't fail. I'm ready too. Plus, I've become much more powerful. We definitely won't fail. Offit's subordinates yelled at the same time. Okay, quiet down. Offit interrupted them. We still need some time to prepare for the Egypt mission. This time, it's something else. Nicole, you know the supernatural organization, right? Offit looked at a woman in a black dress. She was tall and wore rimless glasses, holding a book. The supernatural organization? Nicole pushed up her glasses. Yes, it's an international organization. Currently, there are 13 members in the world. They're China, America, Japan, England. I want to know more about the Supernatural Organization of America. Boss, the organization is very weak. It was founded in 1990 and has been around for 29 years. It's supported by the Anti-Terrorism Department. They've changed their president many times, but because the members are too weak, the president left and abandoned the organization in the end. President, does our mission have anything to do with the organization? They kidnapped my grandson, Offit said. They want me to hand over the Demon Bible in exchange for my grandson. What? Are they crazy? God, do they know what they're doing? Offending Boss Offit? I don't understand what they're thinking. Boss Offit, let me go. I'll bring your grandson back in one piece. No, I'll bring my grandson back personally, Offit said coldly. Offit said coldly. Perhaps it's because I rarely move around the country that the spiritual world in the country doesn't know about me. Perhaps I need to use this operation to prove my existence to the spiritual world in the country. Yo, Boss Offit is angry. So scary. Boss Offit rarely shows such an expression. Pray for the organization. I hope they won't collapse. Where are they now? I can't wait to see their expressions when they see us. L.A. Great, we can go to L.A. now. Everyone was very relaxed. To them, this was just a vacation. Boss Offit, do you need a divination? A woman holding a crystal ball asked. Let's do it. Holding the crystal ball, the woman chanted. Suddenly the crystal ball cracked. As if shocked by electricity, the woman hurriedly stopped. What happened? Damn it, I just bought this from a magic shop. That shop sold me low-quality goods. I'm going to smash it. Forget it, Offit said. No need for divination after we return from L.A. I'll buy one for you. Okay. Boss Offit, should we go now? I still have some unfinished medicine in my lab. A blue-haired woman with a colorful face said. Chapter 1255. It's up ahead. There were 9 people in the group, driving 4 cars, lined up in a straight line. Offit had been resting with her eyes closed. Hearing her subordinate's words, she opened her eyes. Seeing the building ahead, she said coolly, "Smash the metal gate open." Aduz, who was guarding the gate, had already stood up when he saw the 4 cars. He was about to open the gate, but he didn't expect the car at the front to ram in. He was already standing behind the gate. When the car crashed into him, he couldn't dodge in time. The metal door was knocked down, and Aduz, who was behind the metal door, was crushed under it. Aduz's screams reached the headquarters, and when the people there heard it, they immediately rushed out. A few evil spirits had been wandering nearby, but when they heard Aduz's screams, they immediately rushed over. But before the evil spirits could save Aduz, a red light swept past. The evil spirits had been turned to dust. This scene was witnessed by West, who had just come out. He saw 9 people get out of the 4 cars. The leader was a tall old man with a white beard. Who are you? West yelled. Luodu, go. Luodu immediately charged at West. Luodu's poison was very fast. Seeing that he was going to attack him without any explanation, West hurriedly used slow field. In an instant, Luodu's movement stopped, and he stood still on the spot. What spell is this? Who are you? West asked again. You called me here. Why are you asking me who I am? Offit looked coldly at West. Just then Pamela arrived as well. Seeing the enemy invade, Pamela dove down from the sky toward Luodu. Nicole immediately flipped the book in her hand. A few evil souls rushed out of the book and attacked Pamela. Pamela saw the vile souls approaching. She turned around and let out a shrill scream. In the blink of an eye, those vile souls were destroyed. So strong. This evil spirit is so strong. Nicole's eyes were filled with wariness. Pamela burrowed into Luodu's body. Luodu and Pamela immediately fought for control of the body. But soon Luodu lost control of his body. Crack crack, Pamela controlled Rhoda's body. His bones made crisp sounds. Mr. West, who are they? West heaved a long sigh. I don't know. Hurry up and save Aduz. Offit and the others frowned. What was up with this evil spirit? She had actually taken control of Luodu's body. One must know that Luodu was a spiritualist. Although he wasn't very strong, how could a spiritualist be controlled by an evil spirit so easily? Pamela controlled Rhoda's body. It wasn't her body anyway, so she didn't care if it would be hurt. The banshee's aura began to spread throughout Luodu's body. Luodu's face turned pale, and his pupils turned white. At this time, more and more people came out of the headquarters. Mr. West, Miss Pamela, what happened? Was Aduz attacked by them? Who are they? I don't know who they are, but they attacked our headquarters first, West said. Save Aduz first. I'll call the chairman. Baka. I will kill them all. Anyone who dares to offend us will be killed. Dongya Tianxi yelled, sword in hand. Old man, you go attract their attention. I'll go save Aduz, Gitkira said. Okay. Kill. Dongya Tianxi immediately rushed toward Offit and the others. Offit rubbed his nose. He didn't need to do anything. Behind him, Antaeus had already turned into a 4-meter-tall giant and punched at Dongye Tianxi. Seeing Antaeus attack, Dongye Tianxi raised his sword and slashed at Antaeus. The sword hit Antaeus' fist, but there was only the sound of metal and sparks. Antaeus' fist was unharmed. Antaeus increased his strength, and Dongye Tianxi was sent flying. But Dongye Tianxi didn't fall to the ground. After being knocked back a dozen meters, he actually managed to dissipate the force and landed steadily. Antaeus, we're not here to kill, so don't be too heavy-handed, Offit said with a smile. Boss Offit, I can't control my power. Antaeus' voice was majestic, and there was a hint of arrogance in his tone. Antaeus was just like Antaeus, the son of the earth in Greek mythology. As long as his feet were in contact with the ground, he would never feel tired. The earth could bestow him with endless power. At that moment, Wuxia had already circled around from the side. She didn't plan to fight. She only wanted to save Aduz, who was under the iron door. But Antaeus didn't plan to let Wuxia succeed. Antaeus punched at Wuxia. Wuxia quickly raised his hammer to meet the attack. Bang! Wuxia was also sent flying. She was in a much worse state than Dongye Tianxi. Dongye Tianxi knew how to dissipate the force, but Wuxia only knew how to meet force with force. With a single blow, he was sent flying 30 meters away, hitting the outer wall of the headquarters. How dare you cause trouble in the association? Kill! Harris's voice rang out. Then, the lake in the distance began to churn. One by one skeleton soldiers emerged from the lake. Harris's undead creatures were all hidden in the water. Because the headquarters wasn't suitable to store these undead creatures, she usually hid them in the lake. Black Witch. Offit raised an eyebrow. Nicole also frowned. This girl who came out from the back was very powerful. It seemed like this supernatural association wasn't as weak as the rumors said. A large number of skeleton soldiers charged at Offit, and the others. At that moment, a flash of fire descended from the sky. Boom! A violent explosion rippled out. The expressions of Offit and the others changed again. Such powerful magic. Gaia had rushed back from the set. When she heard that the association had been invaded, she immediately stopped what she was doing. Gaia walked out of the flames step by step. When she saw Aduz, who was pinned under the iron door, Gaia's expression instantly turned furious. This cute little old man was their association's mascot. Gaia raised the tip of her sword and charged at him. Antaeus punched Gaia again. Gaia swept her sword. This time, it was Antaeus who was forced back, while Gaia was unstoppable. Gaia was about to lift the iron door to save Aduz. Suddenly, a force came at Gaia and sent her flying. Although the force was very powerful, Gaia wasn't hurt. Beside Offit was a long-haired woman. Her body was light as she floated slightly in the air. A strong cyclone surrounded her. Trying to save him, the long-haired woman looked at them with contempt. Chapter 1256. The long-haired woman didn't use wind magic, but a bloodline ability. She could control the wind, and it danced with her. Suddenly, a cold light cut through the air. Oh no! The long-haired woman's expression changed drastically. She immediately controlled the wind element, and turned it into a chaotic airflow. But the cold light seemed to have eyes and accurately passed through the chaotic airflow. It pierced through the long-haired woman's chest. She grunted and vomited blood. There was an arrow in her shoulder. The long-haired woman looked up and saw a leopard-shaped figure holding a longbow on the rooftop. Just then, Gila's skeleton army had arrived, and was charging at Offit's group. These skeleton soldiers were very weak. Even Wuxia could kill one with one punch, let alone Antaeus. However, they weren't really that weak. Even if they were smashed, they could still reassemble. Also, the reassembly form wasn't like human skeletons. They could take any shape, like beasts or even dragons. Gilas didn't use her brothers and sisters. She didn't let them get too close to Aduz. She didn't want to hurt Aduz by accident. Klaus and the others did the same. They didn't show themselves, but they had already taken the high ground. As long as they found a chance, they would attack Offit's group. After Gaia was sent flying, she charged forward again. But this time, she turned into a fire dragon. Offit and his subordinates' expressions changed when they saw Gaia's fire dragon form. Gaia lay on Antaeus's body. The hot flames made Antaeus howl. Offit was finally moved. The supernatural organization was stronger than he'd imagined. He couldn't keep watching. Offit chanted, and turned into a werewolf. This was his first form. He borrowed the power of the Hell Wolf. Seeing Gaia and Antaeus fighting, he was about to attack Gaia. Suddenly a murderous intent approached. Whoosh! Offit immediately took a step back. A bowl-sized hole appeared on the ground beside him. Sniper! Offit's face darkened. Is everyone in the supernatural organization sneaky like this? West looked at Offit from afar. You said we sneak attacked. In that case, isn't it a sneak attack when you sneak attacked our association? You kidnapped my grandson. So you're that idiot's grandfather. As expected, like grandson, like family. West glanced at Aduz. Aduz's situation wasn't looking good. He could not drag this on any longer. West walked forward. Field of sluggishness. Everyone who was enveloped by his field of sluggishness stopped moving. Gatkula, go and save them. Offit wanted to move, but he felt as if his body had been filled with cement. It was difficult for him to move. Offit sensed that the sniper was aiming at him. Offit immediately activated his second demon form, the immortal golem. In an instant, Offit's body turned into stone. At the same time his power increased. Wester immediately felt a huge force being exerted on him. The mana consumption of the slow field was several times higher than before. Gatkira had already rescued Aduz while Offit and the others were frozen. But at this moment West's slow domain finally collapsed. Offit grabbed West and choked him. Now, do you have any other spells? It's meaningless for you to win, Wester said nonchalantly. At the same time he looked up at the sky. You're already in my hands. Do you think it's meaningless? In your hands? You don't seem to understand. I'm not in your hands. You're the one who broke into hell. The Demon King's territory. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky started to gather. Lightning flashed and thunder roared in the rolling clouds. Gaia suddenly retreated from the battlefield. At this moment, the members of the association also retreated a certain distance. Suddenly, 8 bolts of lightning shot out from the sky and pierced through Offit and his subordinates. The stone on Offit's body collapsed instantly. Wester landed on the ground and adjusted his collar nonchalantly. Offit and his subordinates all clutched their chests and half knelt on the ground in pain. Although the lightning just now wasn't fatal, it still brought them great pain. Antai's body was the strongest, and he was the first to recover. Offit and the others felt a terrifying murderous intent behind them. Antaeus, behind you. Antaeus turned and saw a man standing at the gate. With a roar, Antaeus charged at the man. Hiss! Under everyone's gaze, Antaeus was forcefully torn in half. Flesh, blood, and organs splattered everywhere. The man didn't feel like he was tearing apart a person or a giant, but a piece of roasted rabbit meat. Antaeus! The long-haired woman screamed. Antaeus was her husband, but he was killed right in front of her. Instantly, the long-haired woman sank into madness. I'm going to kill you. Boom! A terrifying bolt of lightning fell from the sky and landed on the long-haired woman's head. Ah! The long-haired woman was scorched. Her carbonized body fell to the ground. Who's the leader? Chun Zhao's cold gaze swept across Offit and the others. Offit's expression changed. She chanted a spell. King Kong Demon. Offit's body started to change shape. His skin started to be covered in metal. The dark lava turned into a blade and sliced across the ground. Offit suddenly felt danger and tried his best to move away. But he wasn't faster than the blade in the end. One of his arms was chopped off. Chun Zhao stood at the gate and saw Aduz, who was being carried by Genikla. This infuriated Chun Zhao. The dark lava seemed to boil and spread under Offit and the others' feet. Everyone felt like their feet were about to be scorched. They wanted to escape the dark magma-covered ground, but their feet were firmly fixed in place. Ah! Ah! Everyone was screaming miserably. Regardless of whether they were men or women, all of them were enduring endless pain. Rooney was the first to fall to the ground. A large part of his body came into contact with the dark magma. The dark magma stuck to his skin. Rooney struggled to get up under the intense pain, but his skin couldn't get up with him. Half of his body's skin was torn. Within the dark magma, dark bustille appeared and devoured the corpse. Everyone sank into despair. Who are you? Offit cried out in pain. You came to my territory and asked who I am? Wes was only one step away from Offit, but he wasn't affected. The dark lava was less than a meter before him. Chapter 1257. Offit struggled to pull his feet out of the dark lava. By now, the skin on his feet had already peeled off due to the high temperature. The pain was indescribable, but he still endured the pain and let out a low growl. Boss Offit is going to use that move. Damn, we're too close. We'll be affected. Offit's subordinates wanted to escape, but their feet were all tied up. They couldn't move at all. Offit raised his arms. His limbs were growing longer, and his body was growing larger. He'd turned into a demon and started breathing. His stomach bulged as he inhaled. Offit's subordinates all covered their ears. Roar! Instantly, Offit released all the air in one breath. It was like the lion's roar in Wuxia novels. Offit's subordinates were too close. It wasn't a direct attack, but they still spat out blood. Their mouths, noses, and ears were bleeding from Offit's roar. The surging sound waves crashed into Chen Zhao as if they were solid. But Chen Zhao still didn't move. The sound waves could indeed form an impact. But to Chen Zhao, it was just a slightly stronger wind. Offit's roar lasted for 10 seconds before it finally stopped. The cement at the entrance of the headquarters was also lifted. Only Chen Zhao remained where he was. Offit and his subordinates all stared at Chen Zhao dumbfounded. Even such terrifying power couldn't defeat that person? Offit was known as the King of Lions in the international supernatural world. He'd never lost before. But now, an unknown supernatural organization had defeated them. This made everyone feel that this was unreal. Suddenly, another bolt of lightning fell and pierced through Offit. Offit spat out green smoke and fell to the ground. Chen Zhao frowned. Lightning Storm's single-target attack was indeed weak. It couldn't kill a single person. He'd already used his full strength, but the power was still limited. Whatever. Killing them like this would be too easy on them. After Chen Zhao arrived, everyone retreated from the center of the battlefield. They didn't want to be affected by Chen Zhao. Even if Chen Zhao avoided them, they were still afraid that he wouldn't control himself and would be affected. To be honest, they didn't know where this group of people got their courage from. Even if Chen Zhao didn't appear, they were confident that they could keep all of them here. The reason why they had been suppressing their attacks was not because their strength was limited to this. This was because Aduz was still by their side. And the people from the association were afraid that Aduz would be implicated. Rhoda's body was controlled by Pamela. After Chen Zhao arrived, he killed 3 more. Now there were 5 people left. 5 people were dragged into the hall and thrown on the ground. When they came, they were arrogant and didn't care about the supernatural organization at all. However, after arriving here, they suddenly realized that the situation was more troublesome than they had imagined. Especially after Chen Zhao's arrival, the situation that could barely be maintained instantly fell apart. Chen Zhao sat in the middle while West and the others sat in rows. It was like an old master attending a court in ancient times. How is Aduz? It's quite serious, but it's stable for now. Gaia will drive Aduz to the hospital now. Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. Who are they? President, he's Lingam's grandfather. He's probably here to steal Lingam. Offit and the others all lowered their heads. It was too pitiful. They had lost too miserably, and the other party didn't even know who they were or why they were here. Bring Lingam out and shove him and his grandson into a meat grinder. How dare you? Offit glared at Chen Zhao, gritting her teeth. Chen Zhao's gaze was cold as he looked at Offit casually. Are you going to use your power to threaten me? Or your family? That's fine. Tell me and I'll be happy to slaughter your family. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao. They had completely different thoughts. Actually, West and the others all knew that Chen Zhao never attacked the innocent. But right now he needed to have an imposing manner. You might not know, but our president just slaughtered a few hundred people in San Diego half a month ago. Haven't you heard about the gang massacre? Offit and her subordinates couldn't help but shiver. That incident was so huge that even the spirit world was in a state of panic at the slightest sound. Many people believed that it was done by people from the spirit world, including those from the spirit world themselves. Now they finally understood who they were going against. This man was a butcher, a demon king. Offit had indeed wanted to use his family to threaten Chen Zhao. But now, he really didn't dare to mention his family. If he were to find out about this, his family would most likely be killed as well. This man was a demon. You're a righteous organization. How can you do this? Oh right, we're a righteous organization. Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at West. In what name should we take revenge? West rolled his eyes. President, we're a righteous organization, but that doesn't mean we'll let people bully us. They're already at our doorstep. We can't just swallow it, right? So our revenge is open and reasonable. There was no absolute justice in this world. Only the victor could decide who was righteous. See, we're righteous, but we have a good reason too. I'll give you the book of the demon, Offit finally said after making up her mind. That's not enough. Your grandson Lingam offended me. He was the one who promised to give me the devil grimoire. And you guys ambushed our headquarters and injured our people, causing huge losses to our organization. You can't possibly think that we can let this go so easily, right? You killed our people too. I shouldn't have killed them. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. His anger that had just subsided was ignited again. We can compensate your headquarters and the injured people. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and considered. Should he kill them now or compensate them? Chen Zhao turned to West. West thought for a moment. Compared to Chen Zhao's anger, West was much calmer. He didn't want to kill them all. In fact, Chen Zhao didn't want to kill them all. That was why he wanted West to think of a plan that could let him vent and compensate the organization's losses. Chapter 1258. Chen Zhao didn't have to do anything. He just had to smile. But in Offit's eyes, Chen Zhao's smile was a butcher's. When Offit and the others were sent to prison, Lingam thought that they were here to save him. In the end, they were locked in the dungeon by Klaus and the others. Lingam was dumbfounded. In a way, the grandfather and grandson were reunited. Grandpa, you they. Offit was furious when she saw Lingam. Ignoring the pain on her body, she lifted her leg and kicked Lingam. You asterisk shoal. How much trouble did you get me into? Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Lingam wanted to cry. Offit's other subordinates, including the unconscious Rodu, were locked in the next cell. Separated by a man and a woman, they were all weak and had their heads lowered. Klaus knocked on the bars. Name, ability, and magic element. Offit black magic, Offit said with her head lowered. She specializes in borrowing demonic power. After recording for Offit, Klaus went to the next room. There were 3 women in the next room. Name, Klaus said. Nicole Givel. Fustaduya. More Raz. Ability, Klaus said. My power mainly originates from my Book of Holy Spirit. Sealed within the Book of Holy Spirit are countless walkers and ability users. Whenever I need it, I will flip through the corresponding Book of Holy Spirit and borrow the power of the walkers and ability users within, said Nicole. The Book of the Holy Spirit was also the association's spoils of war. It was now in the association's hands. However, only she could use the book. Even if she told others about the book's ability, she wasn't afraid that someone would take it away. I'm a fortune teller, Fusta said. I'm a healer and pharmacist, Moraz said. Healer? What healing spells do you know? Klaus was instantly energized. He knew that West and Chen Zhao had been looking for a healer to join them. He didn't expect that there would be a healer among the captives. Moraz had been frightened tonight. In the past, she'd always been a support. Her companions had protected her well. But who would have thought that what everyone thought was just a vacation would turn into a disaster? I know injury suppression, rapid injury recovery, deferred execution, and holy light glory. These are the main 4 spells. Right now, I'm really practicing purification. What do they do? Injury suppression can temporarily suppress extremely heavy injuries and reduce the pain. Rapid injury recovery can be used for lighter injuries and can be healed in a short period of time. Deferred execution can be used to delay the death of a person who is on the verge of death. Holy light glory can restore everyone's mana. However, this magic can only be used once a year. This is a magic passed down in my family. Molres paused and said, purification can remove most poisons, diseases, and curses. Hold on. Klaus put away his notebook and ran upstairs with quick steps. President, among those people, there is a woman who is a healer. This is her magic. Take a look. Chen Zhao and Wes were still talking. Hearing Wes's words, they perked up. Chen Zhao and Wes went into the dungeon. Seeing Chen Zhao and Wes, More Raz and the others could not help but panic. What's your name? More Raz. Miss Moore, how about joining us? Chen Zhao could not be bothered to beat around the bush. He went straight to the point and stated his request. More Raz's expression was resistant, and his eyes were filled with fear. Definitely don't join them. Especially this butcher. He killed my friend. You don't want to? Chen Zhao looked at More Raz indifferently. Kill them all. Everyone in the cell tensed up and looked at Chen Zhao in fear. How can you do this? That's how I am, Chen Zhao said calmly. How about this? Wes said. If you join us, we'll reduce their punishment. Of course, how much will depend on your performance. What do you think? More Raz was about to speak when West interrupted him. Stop bargaining. Our president doesn't have a good temper. Anyway, Chen Zhao was the bad guy and Wes was the good guy. Chen Zhao did not mind being the bad guy. More listen to them, Nicole said. After all, she did not want to die. None of them wanted to die. To be honest, she was a bit envious of More. At least More had value. But she could only be locked up here. She could not even control her own fate. More Raz was brought out. Although she still hated Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization, she didn't care. But more than that, she was afraid. Then West arranged a place for More Raz. You'll live in this room from now on. If you don't listen, our president will definitely take it out on your friend. If you run away, the consequences will be even worse. Do you see the meat grinder below? It's specially prepared for traitors. How long do I have to serve you? Until the president thinks it's enough. Or until someone can replace you, West said. You know that healers are rare. Don't try to challenge our president. Don't look for trouble. If there's an operation, try to participate. If there's no operation, try not to run around. You must listen to the president. You're all scared of that tyrant, right? We can fight against him together. You're all very strong. Together with our boss, we can suppress that tyrant together. We're not being oppressed. Why should we fight against our president? West rolled his eyes. You should be more obedient. Our president is undefeatable. Moores felt that they must be afraid of Chen Zhao, and did not dare to speak the truth before him. A butcher and demon would not have anyone following him. Never challenge our president's bottom line. Don't do it for your own safety or your friends. When Chen Zhao returned home, Fei Lai was swimming in the lake. Fei Lai was already 6 months pregnant, but she still insisted on swimming for 20 minutes every day. However, her stamina was getting worse and worse. She could not even swim as long as Jerlin. Chen Zhao had considered not going out again after this trip to Nanchi Island. In the future, Chen Zhao planned to stay by Fei Lai's side until she gave birth. Just then Guret's call came. Chapter 1259. Chen Zhao drove a yacht out to sea. He didn't want to get seasick like last time. Even with Chen Zhao's current abilities, he couldn't avoid this physiological reaction. Although the golden key could change one's adaptability to the environment, it would only work when Chen Zhao was in life-threatening danger. Moreover, physiological reactions had many unstable factors. It was just like pain. Many spiritualists would block off their sense of pain so that they could unleash greater strength in battle. But in fact, pain was also the body's alarm system. Without pain nerves, there would be unpredictable consequences. Thus, Chen Zhao wouldn't use unconventional methods to avoid seasickness. Anyway, Chen Zhao had made up his mind that as long as he went out to sea, he wouldn't take those long-distance boats. The stress on long-distance boats and yachts was different. Chen Zhao hated that feeling. He hated the feeling of being dizzy. If he was injured, he could still persevere with his willpower. However, there was nothing he could do about seasickness. His reactions would also slow down due to seasickness. After setting up the navigation, Chen Zhao was free. He lay on the deck and sunbathed. Just then Guret called again. Hey Chen, have you left yet? Yes. I'll reach Hawaii in the morning. They'd agreed to meet up in Hawaii. So Chen Zhao set up the navigation to Hawaii too. Didn't you fly over? No, I took my own yacht, Chen Zhao said. You're going to explore and search for treasures with the yacht? Is there a problem? The yacht can't go deep into the sea, right? Unless you fill the cabin with fuel. Don't worry about that. I have my own plans since I'm driving the yacht. Fine. As long as your yacht doesn't break down halfway, I don't care, Guret said. The sea route is rather long this time, so we don't have much fuel. Don't expect me to give you my boat's fuel. If your yacht runs out of fuel, you'll have to abandon it in the deep sea. I don't lack fuel, Chen Zhao said unconcerned. Fine. After hanging up, Chen Zhao continued to enjoy the scenery at sea. He jumped into the sea to swim, or dive into the deep sea. There were too many things he could do to kill time. At noon, Chen Zhao caught a giant clam in the water. It was 80 centimeters long and weighed more than 150 kilograms. Of course, this was also the location that Amon had sent him. Such a giant toad might not even be found within a radius of dozens of square kilometers. Giant toads were also known as giant clams. Giant toads had a very long lifespan. The oldest giant toad discovered so far was more than 300 years old. Wild giant toads had an average lifespan of more than 100 years. Therefore, the giant toad could grow very big. Wild giant toads were an endangered species, but harvesting them was not prohibited. Currently, only the harvesting of young toads was prohibited, and harvesting giant toads required some special documents. It was not a fishing permit issued by the National Bureau of Fisheries, but a giant toad fishing permit issued by the International Animal Protection Organization. Moreover, it was not given to fishing companies, but to some small island countries. Technically, it was illegal for Chen Zhao to catch the giant toad. Chen Zhao didn't care. The age of this giant toad was estimated to be over 80 years old. The older the giant toad, the more tender its meat was. The best way to eat it is to eat it raw. Mustard is the best dipping sauce. Of course, everyone had their own taste, but Chen Zhao still preferred wasabi. Once it was frozen, however, it could not be eaten raw. Only fresh giant toads could be eaten raw, if the meat was directly cut off from the top. If it was frozen and stored, it could only be used for cooking. Among them, barbecuing and making soup were the best. Chen Zhao finished all the toad meat in one meal, and threw the clam shell back into the sea. Generally speaking, most seafood could be eaten raw, but most freshwater products could not be eaten. It was not just because of the taste. The main reason was that there were fewer parasites in seafood. Even if there were parasites, most could not survive in the human body. Freshwater parasites, on the other hand, could mostly survive in the human body. On the Pacific Ocean, 2 exploration ships moved forward in a row. The large one had a displacement of 9,000 tons. It was called Wild Bull. The other only had a displacement of 4,000 tons. It was called Seagull. Hi, you're Prague, right? Yes, Mr. Rick. I'm Prague. How do you feel about the sea? Not bad, Prague said, smiling. Where are we going next? Our plan is to go to the Suomessa Triangle Sea. The Suomessa Triangle Sea? Is there such a sea? Prague asked, confused. Oh, you're not in the archaeological world, so it's normal that you don't know about this sea. The Suomessa Triangle Sea is a special term for archaeology. It's actually 1,000 nautical miles southwest of the Hawaiian Islands, close to the Solomon Sea, and less than 2,000 kilometers from New Guinea. According to the theory of continental plate movement, the Suomessa Triangle Sea is a fragment of Bethmeyer Island. It's a fragment thrown away by the continental plate movement. There are many traces of primitive civilization there, and many islands have unique traces of primitive civilization. That's why the Suomessa Triangle Sea is also the favorite sea area of primitive civilization archaeologists and explorers. Some of the islands even hide mysterious ruins. Both archaeologists and explorers can only find treasures. Will we encounter natives? Some islands in the Suomessa Islands still have natives, but they're modern natives. They're similar to the natives of New Guinea, but the island we're going to doesn't have any natives. Okay. Prague nodded. It's almost dinner time, Rick said. Let's go in and eat. It'll be cold at night on the sea. Okay. After Prague entered the cabin, a crew member came to Rick's side. Mr. Rick, why are you bringing those 2 university students? It'll be very inconvenient for our plan. Because they paid me $5 million. And Peter's father is the sponsor of our expedition team. He gives us $20 million every year, Rick said matter-of-factly. If it were you, would you reject it? Then what about our plan? We can't just bring them to where we're going, right? Chapter 1260. Pete, I'm sorry. I'm afraid the bison can't send you to the Suomessa Islands. What's wrong? Pete asked, puzzled. Prague also looked at Rick in surprise. The bison has a mechanical problem. The maintenance team has already repaired it, but several parts are seriously damaged. We can only wait for the tugboat to come. We can't go any further. Then what should we do? I paid. And my father gives you $20 million a year. Are you going to be so irresponsible? Pete was the son of a rich family. His tone and attitude were quite arrogant. He had no respect for Rick. To him, not only Rick, but the entire fleet and the entire expedition team were his family. These expedition members, including Rick, were his family's employees. $20 million? Do you know that it costs at least $50 million a year to maintain the expedition and fleet? $20 million? Do you think $20 million can solve all the problems? Rick didn't spoil Pete at all. And do you know how much wealth I bring to your father every year? Young man, you'd better be more respectful. Your father is not a philanthropist, and I'm not your father's subordinate. We're collaborators. Pete's face suddenly became extremely ugly, especially in front of his girlfriend. You said it. When I go back, I'll tell my father to stop working with you. A cold light flashed in Rick's eyes, but it only flashed for a moment before he hid it. The Pete in front of him was still too young. Or maybe his father had protected him too much in the past. So he didn't understand how much trouble his words and actions would bring him. Okay, send them to the Seagull, Rick said indifferently. At the same time he glanced at his crew. Young Master Peter, please. Wait for me. I'll talk to my father on the satellite phone, Pete said unwillingly. Then Pete and Prague went to the Seagull in a kayak. Mr. Rick, what should we do? That troublesome little guy. Rick looked at the Seagull not far away. Inform the people on the Seagull. If he really wants the satellite phone, kill him. His father's money. We still have a huge gap in our funds. We definitely can't let that brat destroy it. Pete's father knew where Rick's expedition came from, but Pete didn't. Pete really thought that Rick's expedition was just an ordinary expedition. Pete's father was a pure businessman. The reason why he cooperated with Rick was that Rick's expedition could bring him profits. He was not a philanthropist. He was a greedy capitalist. Rick was more of a bandit than an explorer. His subordinates were a group of bandits, although they also carried out some exploration and archaeology. But in fact, their main source of income was not exploration and archaeology, but robbing expeditions and archaeological teams. Of course, they weren't ordinary bandits, because once they made a move, they would always be ruthless and ruthless. They would never leave anyone alive. It was precisely because of his ruthless methods that Rick was able to hide his identity so well. So far, no one in the archaeological exploration circle knew his true identity. He could still rely on his identity as an explorer to obtain information that was only available to those in the circle. For example, where did a certain team go, and what good stuff was there? Once Rick had his eyes on a team, he would make meticulous arrangements. Every time Rick snatched something, he would sell it to Pete's father at a lower price. Rick knew the true value of those things, but he was only a bandit, not a businessman. He couldn't sell things for the highest price, but Pete's father could. Compared to his father's sinister nature, Pete was much more foolish. If possible, Rick didn't want to kill Pete. After all, his father wasn't good at picking fights, and Rick didn't want to be enemies with his father. But if Pete wanted to die, Rick wouldn't be lenient. In their line of work, they didn't make a profit for half a year. But once they did, they would eat for half a year. So most of the time they were short of money. And even if they had money, they wouldn't spend it on maintaining the team. Pete's father was the biggest sponsor of his team. Pete's idea was not wrong. In terms of the amount of funding, his father was indeed the big boss of the expedition team. But Rick wouldn't be someone else's underling. And Pete just boarded the Seagull and began to act like a tyrant again. What a broken ship, Pete said unhappily. And why is Prague in my cabin so small? The seagull only had a displacement of 4,000 tons, and its natural conditions weren't as good as the buffalo, which had a displacement of 9,000 tons. Pete, forget it. We're not here for a vacation, Prague advised. She was also quite speechless at Peter's childish temper, especially his attitude towards Rick. Even she felt that it was very inappropriate. You still have the face to speak? It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have to suffer like this. Pete even blamed Prague now. Prague's expression froze, and he looked at Pete with a livid face. I'm going back to Los Angeles. Call your captain over. I really don't understand what I was thinking before. I actually came to the sea to be tortured. Prague gritted his teeth and looked at Pete. He was the one who said that there was an expedition team, and he was the one who could come out and relax. Now he was the one blaming himself. It was as if Prague had met Pete for the first time. Prague was also too young. She thought that when Pete pursued her, he was so passionate and made so many vows of love. She thought that Pete really liked her. She didn't expect that after just 2 days of sea breeze, Pete would show such a face. We will not return, the crew member said in a cold tone. Before Pete and Prague came to the Seagull, Rick had already informed them. If Pete wanted to return or ask for a satellite phone, then he would kill them all and throw them into the sea. Since they had already fallen out, the crew member simply didn't need to pretend anymore. What kind of attitude is this? How dare you speak to me like this? Do you know who my father is? Do you believe that I won't let you die without knowing how? The crew member pulled out a gun from behind and pointed it at Prague and Pete. What are you doing? Don't shoot. Let's talk this out. Peter was terrified. He grabbed Prague's arms and hid behind her. Prague was first frightened by the crew member's actions, but she was even more shocked by Pete's cowardly behavior. Chapter 1261. Captain, his father is not a good person. If we blatantly blackmail him, we will definitely die a horrible death. The crew member looked back at the captain. Prague suddenly seized the opportunity. She picked up the iron bar beside her and heavily smashed the crew member's wrist that was holding the gun. Prague immediately picked up the gun. Don't move. Pete's face was full of disbelief. He didn't know Prague had such a decisive side. The surrounding crew members saw Prague grab the gun and were somewhat shocked. But they weren't worried. After all, Prague was just a woman. Miss Prague, you better understand your situation. The captain looked at Prague, his tone somewhat disdainful. To be honest, Prague was very calm at the moment. Perhaps because she had experienced more severe and dangerous events. So at this moment, Prague wasn't that afraid. Suddenly, Prague turned the gun and pointed at the captain. Bang! Prague fired, and the captain fell to the ground. But the gun wasn't fatal. The other crew members immediately wanted to pull out their guns. But at this time, Prague fired several shots. These shots made the crew members dumbfounded. They all covered their heads and fled. Prague turned and ran into the cabin, and Pete quickly followed him. He looked at Prague with shock in his eyes. Is this the girl in my life? Just then another crewman came out of a hatch on the walkway. He heard the noise outside, and came out to see what was going on. Just in time to see Prague, he didn't have time to react. Prague had already raised the gun to the crew member's forehead. Pete, take his gun away. Oh. Pete quickly searched the crew member's gun. Prague single-handedly held the crew member's neck and used him as a meat shield, slowly retreating. Where is the kitchen? Prague asked. Go straight, the innermost cabin is the kitchen. At this time, the crew members outside the deck came in, but they didn't dare to shoot. They stared at Prague, Pete, and the kidnapped crew member as they entered the kitchen. As soon as Prague entered the kitchen, he immediately locked the door. This kind of closed cabin door was locked with a wrench. If one side was fastened, then the other side definitely couldn't be opened. This was because ocean-going ships like theirs often had to go to some rough seas, and many times, the waves would come in from the deck. Therefore, many people often use this kind of closed cabin door to block the sea water. But now Prague was given a chance. Peter, tie him up. Oh, Peter was completely shocked by Prague's swift method. He never thought that the seemingly weak would have such a decisive response. What do we do now? Don't worry. They should be the ones thinking about what to do now, Prague said calmly. Food and water are all here. And the nearest island or coastline is at least 3 days away. We have enough time to delay them. And 3 days is enough for them to die of thirst at sea. At this time, the crew members who were being held hostage also reacted. He also looked at Prague in surprise. He did not expect Prague to have such a side to him. You seem to have forgotten about the bison, the crew member said in a calm tone. Isn't the bison broken? Peter asked in surprise. Rick must have lied to us, Prague said. Prague finally reacted. They most likely have some ulterior motives, but they accepted your money, so they planned to bring us to Seagull and send us away. But your attitude, and your threat to sever your father's cooperation with them, made Rick unhappy, so he wanted to kill you. To put it bluntly, all of this could have been avoided. It was all Peter's stupid words and attitude that caused this disaster. Peter's face turned red. He retorted, It's all because you wanted to go out to sea. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in danger. There are electric welded walls outside, so even if we don't inform the bison, this door won't last long, the crew member said. So I advise you to surrender as soon as possible. A stalemate won't do you any good. I don't think so. After I held you hostage just now, those people were obviously very nervous. Who are you on this ship? My name is Pammy. I'm not anyone on this ship. I'm just a collaborator with them. The crew member shrugged. Collaborator from what side? You won't believe me even if I tell you, Pammy said calmly. How do you know I won't believe you if you don't tell me? Okay, I'm a deep-sea priest. I can help the exploration ship avoid dangerous waters, Pammy said. Nonsense. What deep-sea priest? You're just a liar. Peter didn't believe Pammy at all. See, you won't believe me even if I tell you, Pammy said calmly. She didn't care about Peter's attitude. I believe you, Prague said. Prague, he's obviously lying. He's lying to you on purpose. Prague didn't want to talk to Peter at all. If they weren't in the same boat, Prague would have shot Peter. Do you have any spells that can stop them from coming in? Prague asked. Why should I help you? You're holding me hostage now. Pammy sneered at Prague. Prague lifted Pammy coldly. At the moment, Pammy was tied up tightly and couldn't resist even if she wanted to. Prague pressed Pammy's head on the stove and turned on the gas, but he didn't light it. The choking gas drilled into Pammy's nostrils, making it difficult for her to breathe. Don't challenge my patience and don't think you're special, Prague said coldly as he turned off the gas. Peter felt that Prague in front of him was very unfamiliar. Was she really Prague? Pammy coughed violently. Breathing in gas was very uncomfortable. What about now? Prague looked at Pammy. My hands are tied. I can't cast spells, Pammy said. Prague narrowed her eyes at Pammy. She didn't want to let go of Pammy. Especially after knowing that he was a spiritualist, Prague was even more cautious. She was completely unfamiliar with deep-sea priests, and didn't know what abilities Pammy had. Now that he was tied up, she could still threaten him with a gun. But once she let go of Pammy, she would probably be controlled by him. Just then, there was a sudden hurried knock on the closed door. Open the door. Open the door. Let me in. The voice outside didn't sound like a request or a threat. It was more like a plea for them to open the door. But of course, Prague wouldn't open the door. Suddenly, there was a scream from outside. What happened? The people outside were attacked. Chapter 1262. Prague didn't dare to open the door, because she didn't know what was happening outside. Moreover, they had only been hiding here for less than 20 minutes. How could something happen outside so coincidentally? So, Prague was inclined to believe that the crew of the Seagull deliberately tricked her into opening the door. Pete was the kind of man who didn't have his own opinions. Since the beginning, he had been by Prague's side. Prague, what do we do now? Hide, Prague said. Do you have your phone? Yes, but there's no signal. We're far out at sea. We can only use satellite phones. Prague looked at Peter with some disdain, but she still said patiently, We'll wait for them to reach the shore. They're outside and don't even have food. They might not even make it to the shore. Then we can completely take over the ship. Don't use the phone. Peter nodded. Prague began to wander around the kitchen. There were at least 30 people, enough water and food for 2 months. They wouldn't starve to death, even if they hid here for a year. Prague took a piece of bread to replenish her energy. Peter, on the other hand, was in a trance. He had no appetite at all. Give me some too, Pommy said. Just as Pete was about to take it, Prague stopped Pete. Just give him the minimum food supply. A little bit a day. That's the only way to ensure our safety. Why? Because he's not an ordinary person. Do you really believe that he knows magic? Peter asked in return. If you don't want to die, you'd better listen to me, Prague said. Fine. Pommy looked at Prague helplessly. She had to admit that Prague's thinking was meticulous, as if she had received professional training. Miss Prague, have you received military training? No. Shouldn't ordinary people panic in a situation like this? Also, you're a woman. I've been through more terrifying situations. Compared to that situation, the people on this ship are like obedient children in kindergarten. Have you come into contact with other spiritualists before? Yes. Prague nodded. No wonder you weren't surprised when you found out about my identity. Prague? What spiritualist? Peter couldn't understand Prague and Pommy at all. Nothing. Just then Pommy started to act up again. I need to go to the bathroom. Hold it in. I can't hold it in anymore. Then just poop it on your pants, Prague said calmly. She had no intention of helping Pammy at all. Pommy looked at Prague helplessly. He didn't expect Prague to be so cautious. I promise I won't cause any trouble. Can you untie me? No. Prague obviously didn't trust Pammy. After an hour, Pammy finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I really can't hold it in anymore. Let me go to the bathroom. Previously it was just a test, but this time it was for real. Pete, take him to the toilet. Pete wanted to ask why it was him. But on second thought, if it wasn't him, who else could it be? Don't bring guns, Bragg said again. Why? If he wants to resist, even if he holds you hostage, he won't be able to hurt you without a weapon, let alone change the situation. But if you have a gun, and he happens to take it away, then you will put us all in danger. Pammy looked at Prague deeply. She had to admit that Prague's thinking was too meticulous. You wouldn't believe that she didn't have professional military training. After a while, Pammy came out of the toilet, tied up again. To be honest, this was the perfect hiding place. There was a toilet, food, and fresh water. Plus, the people outside couldn't come in. Actually, you don't have to be so cautious. Since you've met spiritualists before, you should know that they have different types. I'm not an offensive spiritualist, Pammy said. Plus, even if there's a gun in front of me, I can't beat you. Pammy's words were sincere. Based on Prague's previous behavior, Pammy didn't plan to resist. To be honest, if Prague went out and fought the crew on the boat now, Pammy doubted that the people on the boat could beat her. Of course, Prague didn't think so. She knew what she was capable of. In terms of intelligence, she could barely beat Pammy. But if she fought with real guns, she would probably be shot into a sieve by the crew outside in one round. The boat was parked outside Hawaii. Chen Zhao didn't dock it at the port. The boat was a medium-sized boat, so it wasn't cheap to dock at the port. It cost $100,000 to dock once, and a few $1,000s a day. Chen Zhao didn't lack money, but he didn't plan to waste it either. Not long after, the yacht's radar detected a ship approaching the yacht. Hey Chen, my boat is approaching you. It's less than 20 nautical miles away. Although they'd already agreed, Guret still reminded Chen Zhao when he got closer, in case Chen Zhao thought it was a boat with unknown intentions. Soon, Guret's boat was within sight of Chen Zhao's boat. Boss, what a big boat. The person on it must be rich. Let's do this, right? Guret's subordinates were all excited. They could tell that the boat belonged to a rich person. This was also the open sea. For the pirates, it was the best target. The owner of the boat is our partner this time, Guret said indifferently. If you don't want to die, you better give up. That person is definitely not someone you can offend. Guret's boat slowly approached the boat and gave Chen Zhao a signal. Chen Zhao waved his hand, gesturing for them to come closer. When they were close, Guret boarded the kayak and came to Chen Zhao's boat. Hey Chen, we finally meet again. Okay, can we go now? Guret nodded and turned around to signal his crew, telling them to start the boat. Chen Zhao took out some food for Guret. How far are we from Nanchi Island? It's a 4-day journey. That's really far. Chen Zhao was already prepared to spend a long time at sea. According to Guret, It would take 8 days to go back and forth. No, it should be 10 days, because it took Chen Zhao a day to get here from Los Angeles. Why did you drive the boat out? It's not convenient to enter the deep sea. I'm seasick, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. You're seasick? What's so strange about seasick? Chapter 1263. During the break, Chen Zhao chased Guret back to his ship. Apart from Guret, no one else was allowed to board his ship. Just because Chen Zhao was working with Guret didn't mean he could accept pirates. These guys looked at his ship weirdly. Who knew if they would steal anything once they boarded his yacht? Guret's subordinates were also very unhappy with Chen Zhao's behavior. Boss, who does that guy think he is? He's looking down on us. Ag, who cares about his attitude? Guret glanced at her subordinates. Just mind your own business. Guret was also unhappy with Chen Zhao's attitude, but they were working together now. She didn't want something small to cause a problem in their cooperation. Whether it was her or Chen Zhao, they both wanted money. Plus, she didn't think she could gain anything from falling out. Showing off her dignity? Changing Chen Zhao's attitude? Guret was very clear about her position. Chen Zhao needed her. And she needed Chen Zhao too. Ag looked at Chen Zhao's ship, her eyes filled with greed. How much could this ship be worth? Even if it was sold as a second-hand ship, it could probably fetch tens of millions of dollars. Unfortunately, Guret didn't agree with him at all. In the next 2 days, the pirates watched as Chen Zhao enjoyed good food and wine on the ship not far away. He even jumped into the sea to play. On the other hand, there were only a few dozen of them on the broken ship. This difference in treatment made everyone very dissatisfied. Actually, Chen Zhao was already somewhat bored. It was mainly because of loneliness. Guret would occasionally come over to chat with Chen Zhao. Otherwise, he would chat with Fei Lai on the satellite phone. When they reached the deep sea, the waves started getting bigger. This showed the good performance of the ship. When the waves hit the ship would deflect them. However, if the ship encountered a 20-meter wave, it would be very dangerous. The ship couldn't withstand the impact of such a wave. Only Guret's ship could. Her ship was an ocean-going ship. In this sea, the 10-meter wave was already a threat to Chen Zhao's ship. Chen Zhao had to release his little world to protect his ship. Chen Zhao earned money by going out to sea to search for treasures. If he didn't earn any money and lost a ship, he couldn't accept it. Agu had been standing on the deck of the pirate ship for the past 2 days, staring at the yacht. Why didn't the yacht capsize? Agu had always hoped that the waves in this area could capsize the yacht. Then, the Asian would need to ask for help from their pirate ship, and they would be able to reject him and not let him board the ship. At that moment, another huge wave came crashing over. The bow of the pirate ship tilted down and passed through the waves. However, the huge waves directly drenched the people on the deck. Ag wiped the seawater off his face and looked at Chen Zhao's yacht. However, to his disappointment, the waves suddenly weakened after reaching Chen Zhao's yacht. Damn it, such a big wave. Why did it weaken after walking for a few dozen meters? Agu became more and more dissatisfied. His jealousy had already twisted him. Suddenly, Agu saw a ship amidst the waves ahead. Boss, there's a ship ahead. Agur immediately reported to Guret. What ship? I don't know. Signaling. No response, and I don't see anyone on the deck, Agar said. Search for the nearby radio channels. Only the Asian's yacht has a radio channel. That ship doesn't have a radio channel. How can it not have one? Radios were very common. Any mid-range or long-range ship had to be equipped with radios. Even fishing boats and illegal immigration boats had radios. Should we go closer and take a look? Agar asked. Usually, according to the international rules, when one received a distress signal, they had to go and rescue if the conditions allowed. Such a ship stopped in this turbulent sea, and there was no radio signal. It was very likely that something had happened to the ship. Of course, they were pirates and wouldn't go and rescue people. Actually, they had saved people before. Of course, they wouldn't expose their identities. Boss, let's go and take a look, Agar suggested. Okay. Send a signal to Mr. Chen's yacht, and tell it to stop for now. We'll go and check the ship. Agar's lips curled into a subtle smile. He quickly ran to the cockpit and picked up the walkie-talkie. Mr. Chun, there's a ship ahead. Boss Guret asked you to come with us and see who's on it. Chen Zhao also saw the ship in front of them. He was rather bored now. After some thought, he agreed to the suggestion. Chen Zhao stopped the yacht and lowered the anchor. Then he released the kayak into the sea. Guret's pirate ship also sent 5 people. They arrived on the Seagull one after the other. Agar took out a grappling hook. He threw it up and hooked it to the edge of the boat. Then he started climbing. When all 5 climbed up, Agar looked down at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chun, do you need us to help you? Agar looked at Chen Zhao teasingly. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. He could feel Agar's malicious tone. Chen Zhao pulled the grappling hook. Ignoring Agar, he climbed up himself. Seeing Chen Zhao climb up, Agar wanted to kick the grappling hook away, but it didn't budge. After reaching the deck, Chen Zhao started looking around. He was also curious why there was no one on the ship. It didn't look like a ship that had drifted for a long time. There were still traces of people on it. There should have been people on the Seagull not long ago. Mr. Chun, you know who we are, right? Agar stared at Chen Zhao. He planned to give Chen Zhao a show of strength here. Therefore, the people he chose were all his trusted subordinates. Chen Zhao looked around. Then he walked around Agar and walked toward the cabin. Chen Zhao completely ignored Agar. Agar's face immediately twisted. Just then, one of Agar's subordinates raised his fist and punched Chen Zhao's back. Kid, our boss is talking to you. Didn't you hear? Chen Zhao turned around and looked at the 5 people. Suddenly, Chen Zhao pulled out the gun that the pirate had inserted into his pants and pointed it at the pirate's chin. Bang! Agar and the others didn't expect Chen Zhao to be so decisive. They were about to attack when Chen Zhao raised the gun and pointed it at Agar's head. Were you talking to me just now? Agar didn't dare to move. At the same time, he opened his arms to stop his subordinates. Mr. Chun, I just want to be friends with you. You don't have to kill one of my subordinates without saying anything, right? Chapter 1264. Mr. Chun, can you put the gun down? Chen Zhao smiled and put the gun down, after which he walked into the cabin. Aga signaled one of his men with the corner of his eyes, and one of his men quietly took out a gun. He was about to aim at Chen Zhao's back. Suddenly, Chen Zhao turned around and fired. A bloody mark was left on the subordinate's cheek. He was so scared that he dropped his gun. Sorry I scared you. Chen Zhao still had that casual smile. But I hope you won't shoot me in the back next time. If it happens again, it won't just leave a mark, understand? Actually, Chen Zhao had wanted to aim at the man's head. However, Chen Zhao's shooting skills were too bad. Even at a distance of 1 meter he could still miss. Chen Zhao glanced at Agar. If there's a next time you can all die. Agar didn't want to move anymore. It was as if this man had eyes in the back of his head. His reflexes were most likely trained on the battlefield. It wasn't wise to fight someone like this head-on. Although Aji's heart was filled with resentment, he still suppressed it. Chen Zhao continued walking toward the cabin, but after a few steps, he felt something under his feet. Looking down, he saw something sticky on the ground. Chen Zhao squatted down and poked it with his finger. It felt like jelly. Agar and his subordinates really wanted to pull out their guns now. But thinking about Chen Zhao's reflexes, they gave up on the idea. This man wasn't easy to mess with. They had to find another opportunity. After a few more steps, Chen Zhao saw blood and claw marks on the wall. It looked like someone had struggled here. Their fingers had scratched the metal floor and left bloody marks. But there wasn't much blood. They came to the end of the corridor. Chen Zhao could feel someone's voice inside. Chen Zhao tried to turn the wheel that sealed the cabin door. It seemed to be locked. Chen Zhao pulled the wheel off and opened the metal door. Instantly, 2 guns were pointed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked into the cabin. It was the kitchen. There were 3 people inside. Chen Zhao even knew one of them. It was Prague. Prague, you dare to point a gun at me? Prague quickly put down his gun and was surprised. Mr. Chun, why are you here? I went out to play and found that there was no one on this ship, so I came up to take a look. I still want to ask you, why are you here? Prague, do you know him? Peter asked, puzzled. Put down the gun if you don't want to die. They have guns. Nobody can be trusted here, Peter said. He'll kill you, said Bragg. Just then, Agu and the others finally raised their guns. They felt that their chance had arrived. Pete raised his gun from the front, and they pointed it at Chen from the back. They didn't believe that Chen Zhao could survive in this situation. Pete didn't expect the 4 people behind Chen Zhao to raise their guns. He wasn't pointing at himself but at Chen Zhao. "Mr. Chen, who are they?" Prague asked, confused. Weren't they Chen Zhao's subordinates? Why was he pointing a gun at him? "They are dead people. Go to hell." Agu fired first. Chen Zhao twisted his neck. The bullet brushed past his face, and he dodged it by a hair's breadth. You shouldn't be so close," Chen Zhao said indifferently. Chen Zhao suddenly pulled out his gun and fired 3 consecutive shots at an extremely fast speed. Bang, bang, bang. 3 of Aji's subordinates died at the same time. At such a close distance, Chen Zhao wouldn't miss no matter how bad his shooting skills were. Aji's expression was somewhat stiff. "Chen, Mr. Chen, I was joking with you. You're still holding your gun. You're not sincere at all." Chen Zhao smiled. Agu was conflicted. Should he shoot or put down his gun? Chen Zhao had actually dodged his bullets at such a close distance. He was already scared out of his wits. Moreover, Chen Zhao had killed 3 of his subordinates in less than a second. This scared him out of his wits. "Mr. Chen, you won't kill me, right? I'm Boss Guret's right-hand man. I'm responsible for many things on the ship." "Of course, I promise you that I won't kill you." Chen Zhao nodded. "I'm such a good friend with Guret. I won't blame you for such a small joke." Agu didn't really believe Chen Zhao's words, but his fear of Chen Zhao forced him to put down his gun. At the moment, Agu was already regretting his actions. Why did he have to make life difficult for Chen Zhao? As expected, Chen Zhao put down his gun. Agu heaved a long sigh of relief. But just then, another thought popped up in his mind. When he returned to Guret, he would definitely tell him about Chen Zhao's violent actions. Agu was the kind of person who would forget the pain after a scar healed. Peter didn't dare to raise his gun anymore. He hurriedly put it down. This man was a butcher who killed without batting an eye. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 3 people. "Mr. Chen, what's the situation outside? I'm going to ask you why you're here. Where are the people on this ship?" "I don't know either. The people on this ship aren't good people. We were tricked onto this ship and realized that they had bad intentions towards us. So I took this person as a hostage and hid here. Not long after, there were cries for help outside. We've been hiding here for 2 days. During this time we didn't dare to go out." "I see. Mr. Chen, can you take us back to L.A.? You can go to my ship first, but I won't go back for a few days. I have my own destination." "Okay then." Pointing at Pommy, Prague said. "He's also a spiritualist. He says he's a deep-sea priest." So embarrassing. As a spiritualist, he's actually taken hostage by a kid. Chen Zhao glanced at Pommy. Pommy didn't retort. Chen Zhao's killing just now had also scared him. "Let's go." Chen Zhao brought the 3 out of the cabin. Prague realized that everyone on the ship had really disappeared. However, they found another corpse on the deck. He was just joking with me, and I accidentally shot him," Chen Zhao said calmly. "That's my ship." "Great," Peter exclaimed in surprise. "I can finally rest. Did I say you can go to my ship? Huh? Why not let me go? You pointed your gun at me just now. Is that reason enough? Do you know who my father is?" "It's none of my business." Chen Zhao snorted and turned to Prague and Pommy. "Jump onto the raft." Peter's eyes were filled with anger. Chen Zhao didn't care about Peter's expression. Peter could only say, "Send me back to L.A., and I'll give you $10,000. Do you think I'm a beggar?" Peter looked at Chen Zhao's ship. It cost at least 50 million. Chapter 1265. 2 million. Chen Zhao raised the price. Just then Agar couldn't stand it anymore. He tried to steal business right in front of Chen Zhao. 1 million. "I'm willing to send you back to L.A." Hearing Agar's price, Peter was also tempted. After all, it was a big expense to save 1 million. "He's a pirate. Are you sure you want to get on his boat?" Chen Zhao sneered. Peter's expression changed instantly. "You're a pirate. As long as you pay, I can promise to send you back to L.A., Agar promised confidently. It was just that Peter had already been cheated once. How would he be willing to get on his boat again? Chen Zhao was fierce, but at least Prague knew him. Mr. Chen, I think I'll get on your boat. I'll pay 2 million. Smart choice. Chen Zhao patted Peter's shoulder. Go to my raft. Agar watched Chen Zhao leave with the three in anger. The duck that was about to fall into his mouth flew away just like that. Prague glanced at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, I thought you'd kill that guy too. I've always kept my word. How could I go back on my word? Seeing that Agar's raft was approaching Guret's pirate boat, Chen Zhao's lips curled. Plus, who knows what's hiding under the sea? Suddenly, Agar's raft flipped. Logically speaking, as a pirate, Agar was definitely good at swimming. However, Agar was calling for help on the sea. His body was bobbing up and down. Prague looked at Chen Zhao. Aren't you going to save him? Hehe, your joke is really refreshing. Chen Zhao could not be bothered with Agar, who was crying for help on the sea. The raft passed him less than 10 meters away, but he still ignored it. Prague, Peter, and Pommy watched as Agar's body sank into the sea. The three all felt that Chen Zhao was cold-blooded. Returning to the boat, Chen Zhao arranged rooms for the three. The 3 rooms on the right of the inner cabin are yours. The 3 looked around their rooms. Prague and Pommy didn't have any objections, but Peter was displeased. Why is my room so small? You have a bigger room. Because I'm the captain. I paid for it. I promised to send you back to Los Angeles. But I didn't promise to let you enjoy it. If you keep nagging, I might send your ashes back to Los Angeles. Pete didn't dare to speak, and Prague was speechless. He had already suffered a loss before. But Pete still didn't learn his lesson, and dared to spout nonsense. Why don't you take a look at who the other party is? At this moment Gulai's call came. Chen, I want you to give me an explanation. Why did you kill all my people? I also want to ask you, why is every single one of the people you sent here filled with hostility towards me? If you don't discipline them well, I don't mind disciplining them for you. If anyone shows hostility towards me again, I won't hesitate to kill them all, even if it's you. Guile was speechless. She had a bad feeling when Agar and his cronies boarded the Seagull. What happened next was just as she expected. Agar and Chen Zhao had a conflict. With Chen Zhao's personality, it wouldn't be surprising if he killed them. The 2 boats continued moving forward. Guile didn't continue arguing with Chen Zhao. She also knew that she was in the wrong. If she kept arguing with Chen Zhao, she would be the one at a disadvantage in the end. Mr. Chen, when are we going back to Los Angeles? Pete was unhappy with Chen Zhao, but he still suppressed his dissatisfaction. At least, he didn't want to anger Chen Zhao again. I still have something to do. I'll add another $1 million. Take me back to Los Angeles immediately. Chen Zhao glanced at Pete and ignored him. Prague and Pommy were very sensible. They also wanted to return to Los Angeles as soon as possible. But they wouldn't be like Pete, who didn't know when to stop. Also, I know you have a gun, Chen Zhao said. If you make a hole in my boat, I'll make a hole in your body. Although Peter was dissatisfied, he could only endure it at this time. Thankfully, Chen Zhao's boat was big enough. The environment and facilities were all top-notch. It was like a luxurious hotel. So the 3 didn't complain anymore. Mainly because of Pete. Pete hid in his room and sulked. On the other hand, Chen Zhao was lying on the sun chair in his boxers, enjoying the sea breeze. Just then, Pommy walked over with a glass of juice. You're a spiritualist too? Yes. Chen Zhao opened his eyes and glanced at Pommy. I heard from Prague that you're a deep-sea priest. What element exactly? I can feel the emotions of the creatures in the sea, Pommy said. From their emotions, I can analyze the danger level of the nearby sea. Then what do you think the sea we're in right now is dangerous? Safe, Pommy answered. What element are you? Strengthening, Chen Zhao said. I also know some random spells, all offensive spells. Wizards have weak magic power. If you practice so many spells, it'll spread out. I don't need someone who can be kidnapped by a college girl to teach me how to use magic, Chen Zhao said in disdain. I don't want to fight, Pommy said stubbornly. Do you really think I can't beat her? He was also someone who cared about his reputation. This was the first time Chen Zhao had mocked him. He was afraid of Chen Zhao's methods and didn't dare to talk back. Now, he basically understood Chen Zhao, so he wasn't as afraid of Chen Zhao as before. Oh, then show me. I'm not a monkey. Unless it's really necessary, I won't show it to anyone. You should listen to me on my boat. If you don't show me, I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Fine. Actually, my spell is deep sea shark. I can summon a school of sharks, so you can't feel the effect on the boat. Summon a school of sharks? Show me. Pommy looked unwilling. This spell uses a lot of magic power. Stop talking and show me. Can I summon one? Fine. Pommy started casting the spell, but after a long time, Chen Zhao still didn't see any sharks. Can you do it or not? There are no sharks nearby. Let's wait, Pommy said. Pommy said, my spell can only summon sharks within a 30-kilometer radius. I can't summon all the sharks in the entire sea. Oh, I got it. Pommy felt the presence of a shark, but as soon as he spoke, his connection with the shark was cut off. What happened? Why did the shark suddenly die? Chapter 1266. How come I don't see the shark? Chen Zhao asked despite knowing the answer. Feeling Chen Zhao's gaze, Pommy was speechless too. He could sense it and make a short connection to order the shark. But he didn't know what the shark was thinking. In the end, he could only attribute it to his bad luck. It was a shark that was about to die. Pommy felt very embarrassed. So, he decided to contact another shark to at least earn his face back. Fortunately, in less than 10 minutes, another shark appeared in the nearby waters. Judging from the strength of his senses, it was a great white shark. Great white sharks were the greatest threat to humans out of all shark species. At least in the sea, they were the greatest threat. Bull sharks, on the other hand, had the most injuries. Bull sharks could adapt to freshwater and would become more aggressive in freshwater, especially in the Ganges River region of India. This was especially true in the Ganges River basin of India. Because of the Indian custom of throwing corpses into the Ganges River, bull sharks living in the Ganges River basin were used to eating human flesh. Moreover, Indian religions believe that bull sharks are a holy symbol, which leads to a large number of bull shark attacks in India every year. Pommy couldn't see the great white shark he contacted. However, from the size of the great white shark's spirit, he could still sense the size of the great white shark based on his experience. The great white shark was very strong and had already reached adulthood. It was the undisputed king of the sea. Pommy controlled the great white shark to approach. Mr. Chen, you can look at the sea on the left of the deck, but don't be scared. With a faint smile, Chen Zhao looked at Pommy. I'm looking forward to it. Pommy could feel that the great white shark was less than 100 meters away from the boat. It's coming. Suddenly, Pommy lost contact with the great white shark. Pommy was stunned. Why did it disappear again? Where was the great white shark? Completely disappeared? What happened? How could this be? Where did the great white shark go? Great white sharks usually lived in shallow waters, more than 200 meters deep. There shouldn't be anything that could threaten them, right? But why did the great white shark disappear? Where did it go? Chen Zhao smiled at Pommy. Where's the shark? Accident. That shark hit the bottom of our boat and fainted. She didn't believe it. She felt that she had to show Chen Zhao her abilities today. However, half an hour later, that shark is constipated and can't leave the water. An hour later, Pommy succeeded. A small shark with a body length of no more than 60 centimeters. Impressive. Chen Zhao looked at Pommy with admiration, and then turned to leave with a smile. Pommy felt like she had lost all her dignity. How embarrassing. After working for more than an hour, only a young shark was summoned. There was nothing more humiliating than this. Although he could not return to Los Angeles immediately, Peter gradually relaxed. Although he was still dissatisfied with Chen Zhao, the only thing that made Pete unhappy was Prague's attitude. Prague was now looking at Peter with disdain. Pete originally wanted to enter Prague's room and do some shameful things with her. But Prague pointed a gun at his head and drove him out of the room. They were heading north, in the direction of the Bering Sea. The cold wind from the Bering Sea not only made the surface of the sea turbulent, but the temperature was also very low. At night, the temperature on the deck was -10 degrees Celsius. Chen Zhao quite liked this kind of environment. When he'd reached extreme polarity with both ice and fire at the same time. Therefore, he was very resistant to low temperatures. In fact, not only was he resistant to low temperatures, but it could also make his mind more stable. During the day, the temperature was a few degrees Celsius. At night, it plummeted. Chen Zhao sat on the roof of the boat, enjoying the chilly spiritual qi that blew from the bow of the boat. Cultivation didn't make much progress for Chen Zhao. However, the low-temperature spiritual qi could make Chen Zhao's mind more stable. If he encountered an unexpected situation, his emotions wouldn't fluctuate too much. Chen Zhao circulated the Qingyi manual in his body and returned to his original state. When he opened his eyes, he realized that Prague was wrapped in a blanket and sitting not far away, also enjoying the cold wind. Prague, why are you sitting here? Don't you want to rest? Prague glanced at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, aren't you cold? Chen Zhao was only wearing a pair of boxers now. Prague really didn't understand how Chen Zhao could endure such low temperatures. Chen Zhao had been sitting there for more than an hour without moving. Prague almost thought that Chen Zhao had frozen to death. Where are we going? Prague asked. Nanchi Island. Never heard of it. Why are we going there? To find the pirate's treasure. Pirate's treasure? That's right. Just then Pommy hurried out of the cabin. Mr. Chen, bad news. Pommy looked like he'd seen a ghost. What's wrong? Mr. Chen, this area is dangerous. Very dangerous. I can feel it. It's very dangerous. We can't go any further. Looks like we're going in the right direction, Chen Zhao said calmly. But Pommy didn't think so. He'd never felt such intense danger. The information the ocean sent him made his scalp go numb. Danger filled Pammy's mind. Mr. Chen, I'm serious. If we go any further, we'll be dead. I'm not joking. There's something really dangerous up ahead. Oh, that's why I'm here, Chen Zhao said coolly. If we continue forward, we will die in this sea. Okay, it's getting late. Go rest. Chen Zhao turned and left. You can't do this. You'll get us all killed. Don't make a fuss. This is part of my plan. You have no idea how dangerous this place is. Pommy still wouldn't give up. Almost all the creatures in the sea are dying. All of them are desperately trying to escape. If you think it's dangerous, you can disembark now. By the way, I can provide you with a raft. Pammy froze. A kayak. How could they rely on a kayak in such deep waters? What was the difference between this and suicide? Chapter 1267. The boat stopped. The boat in front has stopped. Pommy suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Mr. Chen, they've also discovered the problem. They're leaving. Chen Zhao was also confused. He didn't know why Guret's boat had stopped now. Just then Guret connected to the boat's radio. Chen, we've reached the outskirts of Nanchi Island. Okay. Got it. We plan to enter again tomorrow. Okay. Let's anchor here tonight. If we go in again, it'll be a dangerous area. Pommy really wanted to escape from this area. However, Chen Zhao clearly wouldn't let him do that. Nevertheless, he was temporarily safe since he could stop moving forward. Pommy didn't feel sleepy at all. He had been looking at the turbulent sea with a worried look on his face. Pommy still couldn't overcome his fear. He didn't know what was in the water, but it was definitely something that scared him. Just then, a beam of light appeared in the distance. A boat? Another boat appeared nearby. Pommy looked at the boat. It seemed familiar. Wild bull. That's the wild bull? Pommy couldn't help but be excited. He didn't expect the wild bull to come here. If he could return to the wild bull, he would be safe. Mr. Rick, there are 2 boats in front of us. They're about 10 nautical miles away. Rick picked up his binoculars. After looking for a long time, he was confused. How come one of them is a yacht? Contact the 2 boats, Rick said. Yes. One of the ocean-going boats replied that they're here for research. The other yacht replied automatically and refused to let us get close. Any unauthorized approach will be considered a threat. Rick frowned. Can you tell who they are? The so-called research boat has many bullet holes and explosion marks. It's covered up, but it's clearly a pirate ship. I can't tell what's going on with the other yacht. Pirates. Rick narrowed his eyes. The owner of the yacht should be rich, right? Maybe they're already being held hostage by pirates. A pirate ship and a yacht. The combination was too abrupt. It was hard to connect them together. He couldn't help but think that the yacht was being held hostage. Get closer, Rick ordered. Get closer? But aren't they pirates? So what if they're pirates? Do you think we're honest people? Rick's eyes shone with greed. Since we've met, we naturally want to share. They were all bandits. It was just that they hung out in different places. Rick did not think that he would cower in the face of pirates. Take out all your weapons, Rick said. Tell them that we're out of fuel and food. Ask them to supply us with some. Boss, they're approaching us. Guret had also noticed the bison approaching. Guret's face was extremely cold as he stared at the wild bull. Anyone who could appear here was definitely not an honest person. He was like this, and so were others. Take out your weapons. As soon as they get close, we'll start fighting. Guret's attitude was unyielding. Seeing that the bison was getting closer and closer, the waves suddenly became bigger. The waves in this area began to grow larger. The pirate ship began to move up and down, and so did the bison. Even the crew would find it hard to resist, let alone fight. Both sides could only temporarily cease hostilities. The bison could only lower its anchor for now. If it did not, the huge waves might damage the ship. Guret looked at the yacht. She realized that Chen Zhao's yacht was also moving in the waves, but it was much smaller. No wonder Chen Zhao drove this yacht over. It had been modified, Guret thought. The waves grew larger and larger. The huge waves were even taller than the hull. Although the ship would not sink, the huge waves were very painful for the people on the yacht. Chen Zhao also woke up. If he still did not wake up, the yacht would capsize. Chen Zhao stretched. Looking at the swaying pirate ship in the distance, his mood instantly became much better. Pommy, didn't you sleep? Pommy looked at Chen Zhao, who had just walked out of the cabin. I can't sleep. Mr. Chen, can you take me to that ship? Chen Zhao looked in the direction Pommy was pointing. There was indeed a ship that he had not noticed before. Chen Zhao saw that the name of the ship was Bison. Oh, that's the ship. Chen Zhao remembered that Peter and Prague had said that their original ship was called Bison. It seemed to be this ship. Sure. Take the kayak. Pommy looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. The kayak could go over before. But the waves were so big now. The kayak would capsize if it went in. So you're not satisfied? Mr. Chen, can you go closer to the ship? No. Chen Zhao refused without hesitation. That ship is full of bandits. You want me to go closer? Chen Zhao's reason was very good. Plus, he was not even a friend. Pommy was a bit angry, but there was nothing she could do. Pommy could only wait for the sun to rise and the waves to become smaller before going to the bison. But after waiting for a long time, the sky still did not brighten. Even Chen Zhao could feel it. He looked at the time. It was already past 8 in the morning, but the waves were still endless. The sky was still as dark as the night sky. Peter and Prague had also woken up. They also noticed the unusual weather. Guret contacted Chen Zhao. Chen, what's wrong with the sky? I don't know. Don't you know? You've been here before, right? I've been here before, but I've never experienced something like this. Chen Zhao looked at the night sky. He did not feel any magic. However, the unusual weather was definitely not a natural phenomenon. Just then, the bison came toward the yacht. It only stopped when it was more than 10 meters away. It's them? When Prague and Peter saw the bison, their expressions changed. On the deck, Rick also saw Prague, Peter and Pommy. Why were they here? Signal the yacht and ask for a docking, Rick said. What are they saying? Chen Zhao saw the signal from the crew on the opposite deck. He did not understand. They're asking for a docking, Prague said. In other words, to come closer. Don't let them dock, Peter immediately said. They're up to no good. Let them dock, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. If they're obedient, then forget it. Take Pommy away. They won't just take her away, Peter said. They must have other intentions. Chapter 1268. A while later, the wild bull came over. Rick stood on the deck and looked at the people across from him. When the wild bull was less than a meter away, it finally dropped its anchor and stopped. Rick jumped onto the boat with a few people. Sir, hello. How should I address you? My surname is Chun. Mr. Chun. Rick's smile was fake. He looked at Peter and Prague. I want to know why they're on your boat. Peter hid behind Chen Zhao subconsciously. Chen Zhao looked at Rick calmly. It's none of your business. Take Pammy and leave my boat. Other than Pammy, I want the two of them to leave with me too. What if I refuse? Chen Zhao asked. Rick sneered. Do you think you have the right to refuse? Rick's men raised their guns and pointed at Chen Zhao. Suddenly, a huge wave crashed toward them. The boat heaved up and down, but Chen Zhao stood firmly on the spot. But Rick and his men couldn't stand still anymore. Chen Zhao suddenly moved. His fingers pierced through Rick's men's chests and pulled them to the sides. Blood splattered all over the deck. Another man tried to resist, but Chen Zhao punched him. The man's head exploded like a watermelon. Fire! Fire! Chen Zhao attacked again. He raised his leg and kicked the man who couldn't stand still in the first place in the stomach. His body fell into the sea like a piece of rag. Chen Zhao grabbed the fourth man's shoulder and his neck with his other hand. He pulled hard, and the fourth man's body was torn from the shoulder to the neck. He didn't die immediately and was still wailing. When the ship stabilized again, Rick was the only one left. The four subordinates he had brought had all died tragically in Chen Zhao's hands. Pammy and Peter stared at Chen Zhao dumbfounded. They'd never seen such a bloody way of killing before. Mr. Chen, I think there's some misunderstanding. No, there's no misunderstanding. Chen Zhao looked at the people on the wild bull. The people on the other side also saw Chen Zhao's killing. Chen Zhao suddenly jumped onto the wild bull. The people on the deck of the bison immediately attacked Chen Zhao. An arrow shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao caught it and tossed it back. A person died a horrible death. Then, he grabbed the face of the person closest to him and pressed it against the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. In a few moments, the four people on the deck were all dead. Chen Zhao charged into the cabin. Screams rose and fell in the cabin. Occasionally, one or two severed limbs would be thrown out. Only a few minutes had passed from beginning to end. When Chen Zhao walked out of the cabin, he was covered in blood. Chen Zhao returned to his boat and looked at Rick with a smile. Rick had never thought that one day he would actually provoke such a malefic star. That blood-stained face was filled with ghastly horror. Do I have the right to refuse now? Rick paled in fear. He stared at Chen Zhao in horror. Just because of a disagreement, he killed more than 20 people on his ship? Had already foreseen this. She knew better than anyone else how terrifying and powerful Chen Zhao was. In this battle, Chen Zhao didn't even use 1/10 of his strength. But Pete and Pammy were different. To them, this level was enough to scare them to death. Rick's face paled even more. Mr. Chen, I actually didn't plan to. Didn't plan to what? Didn't plan to have a conflict with me? Do you think there's any point in saying this now? I clean my boat, Chen Zhao said. You dirted my boat. Everyone was speechless. You made the deck so bloody. You must have done it yourself, right? But Chen Zhao didn't realize it at all. He felt that it was Rick and his men who did it. Mr. Chen, I'll watch him for you. If there's any residue left on the deck, I'll find it for you. Pete had been pissed off by Rick before. Now that he finally had a chance to take revenge, he was very enthusiastic and proactive. Pammy's face was also pale. Mr. Chen, you're not welcome here. Chen Zhao's attitude was firm. Pammy didn't have good intentions. Before the boarding, he'd already expected a conflict. Actually, the conflict could have been avoided. But he didn't even warn Chen Zhao. Even if Chen Zhao didn't care, it didn't mean that he could tolerate a passenger with bad intentions. Chen Zhao could even tolerate a hot-tempered young master like Pete, because he'd already paid the fees. But Chen Zhao didn't have the obligation to tolerate Pammy. After cleaning up the deck, Rick looked at Chen Zhao with trepidation. Chen Zhao glanced at Rick. He'd attacked again. After a painful scream, Rick's arms were torn off by Chen Zhao. Okay, you can get off my boat now. You can't do this. You killed all the people on the bison. We can't even start the bison. Ha! What does that have to do with me? Chen Zhao chuckled. An ocean-going boat was different from a yacht. A yacht was about simple operation. In other words, it was a system that only idiots could operate. Even people without any sailing experience would be able to operate it. However, an ocean-going boat was different. There were all kinds of equipment, and at least 20 people. Just the cockpit needed 3 people. There were also the engine room and the pressure room that needed a few people to watch. If one person was alone, he'd probably die of exhaustion. As for Rick, he was already useless now. Okay, you can go, or I'll throw you off the boat. Chen Zhao ordered them to leave again. Pete, take care of those arms. Pammy stared at Chen Zhao with hatred. That look of yours can easily get you killed, Chen Zhao said with a smile. Shocked, Pammy lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Chen Zhao anymore. He was afraid that he'd reveal more hatred. Pammy jumped onto the bison. Pete also threw Rick onto the boat. Rick, if there's a chance next time, come to Los Angeles. I'll treat you to a drink, Pete said proudly. Pammy started the bison. It was hard for him to do it alone, but it wasn't completely unusable. After starting the bison, Pammy started cleaning up the bodies on the boat. He threw them into the sea one by one, including Rick, who hadn't died yet. With my flesh and blood, I offer your chaos. With the silence of the four seas, I exchange your darkness. Respond to my horn. Woo woo woo. A loud horn sounded from the bison. The yacht was already a nautical mile away, but it could still hear the horn. Mr. Chen, Pammy probably won't let this go. After all, he's a spiritualist too. Chapter 1269. What's in the sea? Peter realized that something seemed to be moving in the raging waves. Chen Zhao had noticed it long ago. Amon had warned him. A large number of sharks were approaching. Without a doubt, Pammy had summoned them. But what could they do? No matter how many there were, could they jump onto the yacht? Or sink the yacht? Stop joking. This was reality, not a movie or a novel. The bottom and body of Chen Zhao's yacht were made of carbon alloy that was 25 centimeters thick. Carbon alloy was very light, but it was many times stronger than regular steel. Of course, it was also many times more expensive. Unless the sharks were as big as Amon, they could leave a dent in the yacht. But sharks couldn't do any damage to the yacht. It was the same for one shark, 10, 100, or 1,000 sharks. The saying, ants can bite an elephant to death, didn't happen in reality. Even if the sharks used suicide attacks, it was just suicide, not an attack. It was like a normal person hitting an iron plate with their head. Apart from suicide, there was no other use. The iron plate was still iron, but the head would become a watermelon. The sharks hit the yacht, making thumping sounds. It sounded terrifying, but it was actually the sound of the carbon alloy spreading the impact. If the sharks couldn't attack 100 times faster, their numbers wouldn't matter. Peter and Bragg were terrified. After all, the sound was terrifying. They were worried that the yacht would be smashed. If they fell into the water, Chen Zhao might not be afraid, but they would definitely die. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao didn't plan on letting the sharks attack. Suddenly, Peter and Bragg realized that the water turned red. Then a shark surfaced. At first, they thought that the shark had been killed by a collision, but upon closer inspection, they realized that it wasn't the case. The shark seemed to have been bitten by something. Half of its body was gone. It was also more than 6 meters long. At least half of its body was 3 meters long. It had to be a huge beast to be able to bite it in half. Just then another half of the shark surfaced, and then another. To regular people, these sharks might be ferocious beasts in the sea, but compared to Amon, they were clearly not enough. Even the largest great white shark in the sea would not exceed 8 meters in length. An ordinary adult great white shark would basically maintain a length of about 6 meters. It weighed about 3 tons, while an adult killer whale could reach a length of 10 meters and weigh more than 10 tons. Amon's body length reached 75 meters, and his weight was 800 tons. Every time Amon grew up, he would gain a lot of weight. After all, normal creatures wouldn't just grow in length. If it only had length, then it would be a snake. For the giant beasts in the ocean, the bigger they grew, the bigger their bodies became. Not only did Amon's body grow in length and weight, but he was also gradually revealing his demonic form. Chen Zhao didn't even dare to let Amon appear before ordinary people. Amon was fighting with a school of sharks in the sea. Amon's lethality towards them was fatal. Basically, a single bite, a sweep of his tail, or a collision with his body would be fatal. But the shark couldn't even break Amon's skin. Now Amon's skin was as hard as diamond. Even a large caliber gun might not be able to penetrate his skin. There was more than one halberd growing out of his back. There were also many bone spurs growing out of his back. as if they were inlaid with pieces of blades. Within a 1-kilometer radius, there were hundreds of shark corpses floating. The entire sea had turned red. Shock was written all over Bragg and Peter's faces. The pirates on Guret's ship were also shocked. "Boss, what's going on?" Guret pointed at the yacht in the distance. "The owner of that yacht did it." "Him? How did he do it?" "His pet is in the water," Guret said. "This is why I'm working with him. Don't get into conflict with him, especially at sea, because you won't even have a place to run." To be honest, even Chen Zhao was surprised by Pommy's magic. Actually, Pommy's magic was already very good. It even exceeded Chen Zhao's expectations. If the target was someone else, perhaps Pommy's magic could create a massacre. "Master, we've killed all the sharks. Catch up with that ship and kill that man." In the past, Amon couldn't do anything to those large ocean-going ships either. Ocean-going ships were all made of 80-centimeter stainless steel. In the past, Amon would be in the same situation as the sharks against Chen Zhao's yacht. But it was different now. Amon was a huge piece of iron now. An 800-ton iron block could smash anything into pieces. Perhaps an aircraft carrier couldn't be destroyed, but a medium-sized ocean-going ship could be smashed by Amon with just one hit. Pommy sensed that the sharks he'd summoned were disappearing one by one. This took him by surprise. He guessed that it was probably Chen Zhao's doing. Chen Zhao was also a spiritualist. Although he said that he was a strengthening magician, he also said that he knew many types of magic. Coupled with the fact that the summoned sharks had mysteriously disappeared when he had shown him the magic earlier, Linley had no idea what was going on. Pommy's feeling grew stronger. It was definitely Chen Zhao's doing. Pommy somewhat regretted his recklessness. Suddenly, Pommy saw a black shadow coming from the sea. That black shadow was very big, and it was very fast. But because it was more than 10 meters underwater, Pommy couldn't see clearly. The bad feeling grew stronger. Boom! The huge impact threw Pommy 3 meters away. Then the ship started tilting. Pommy hurriedly grabbed onto the protrusion. He couldn't stop the ship from tilting at all. There was nothing he could do. Just then, he saw the black shadow again. It wasn't as long as the bison, but it was still shockingly huge. As the shadow approached the sea, Pommy finally saw it clearly. What was that? A killer whale? Could a killer whale grow so scary? The thing in the water looked like a combination of certain things. Apart from a huge sword that looked like a blade, there was also a row of blade-like bone spikes. On both sides of the huge mouth, there were 2 exposed bones that looked like ivory. On its black back there were faint golden patterns. Pommy had never seen such a creature before. Chapter 1270. Chun, I don't know what's wrong with the sky. It's not bright at all. We can't wait anymore. Let's go to Nanchi Island now. Guret contacted Chen Zhao and told him the plan. Just then an aurora appeared in the night sky. The dazzling aurora was intoxicating. Everyone who saw it opened their mouths. Chen Zhao also looked up at the aurora. It was his first time seeing one. He had to admit that the aurora was too beautiful. It was filled with mystery and unknown beauty. But Chen Zhao couldn't help but wonder. Theoretically, this place was still some distance from the Bering Sea. It was a warm and cold sea, so there shouldn't be such an abnormal aurora. The 2 boats approached Nanchi Island. Nanchi Island wasn't on the common map or navigation. It was an undeveloped and undiscovered island. There were more than 30,000 islands in the Pacific Ocean. The total area of the islands was 4 million square kilometers, which was almost half the size of China. Many newly discovered islands would be added every year. Many islands had magical natural phenomena. Just like Nanchi Island, there were many islands that were submerged in the water for half of the year. The reason why it would sink into the water was because the island was in a very low position. Secondly, the Earth's crust was very active. There were many islands that could dive. There were islands like this off the coast of China. Volcanoes were active at the bottom of the sea and erupted periodically. Every time a volcano erupted, the Earth's crust would move, causing the nearby land plates to shift. After sailing for an hour, Chen Zhao finally saw the outline of Nanchi Island. Just then, Chen Zhao felt something approaching the boat. It wasn't Amon. Then the boat shook. A huge tentacle reached out from the sea and circled around the deck. The suction cups on the tentacle grabbed the boat tightly. The tentacle was more than 1 meter in diameter and more than 30 meters long. Peter and Prague were both frightened by the tentacle. Peter screamed, "Help! North Sea monster! We've encountered a North Sea monster." Some scholars believe that the North Sea monster in ancient Greek mythology was a deep-sea giant cuttlefish. This was common knowledge. Suddenly, the tentacle's suction cups loosened, because Aman had already arrived, and bit the tentacle's body in half. This monster was not a giant squid, but an octopus. A super-large octopus. Chun Zhao sensed that the octopus's body and tentacles were at least 50 meters long. Aman liked the taste very much. At least, Aman didn't eat a single bite of the sharks from before. But this octopus, Aman swallowed half of its body in one gulp. However, this kind of mollusk was not dead. Even though half of its body was bitten off, it was still not completely dead. Several huge tentacles wrapped tightly around Aman. Aman jumped out of the water. At this moment, Prague and Pete finally saw Aman's true body. Both of them opened their mouths wide and looked at Aman in disbelief. The pirates on the ancient ship also had faces full of disbelief. What was that? Guret, on the other hand, frowned. Compared to the first time he met Aman, Aman's appearance had changed a lot. Back then, Aman was huge, but not to this extent. Furthermore, its appearance was that of a true killer whale. But at this moment, Aman was completely in the form of a monster. "Mr. Chun, what is that?" "Monster. Monster. There's a monster in the water. Let's run, let's run." Chun Zhao glanced at Pete disapprovingly. However, before they could get close to Nanchi Island, they saw a warship. More accurately, it was a piece of scrap metal. The warship was upside down and pierced into the water. Guret had said that not long ago, a naval fleet had been completely annihilated here. This warship should be one of them. Suddenly the seawater churned. It was as if thousands of horses were galloping in the sea. Chun Zhao could sense that many smaller creatures were approaching from below the sea. Aman started to clean them up. They were very small, but there were many of them. Aman jumped out of the water again. On Aman's body, many small things stuck to him like parasites. Aman's body shook, and the small things were sent flying. Aman didn't just rely on his huge body to dominate the sea. He also had a certain ability to control the water flow. Guret's pirate ship stopped in front. Chun Zhao saw something climb onto the ship. Fish. The image of the little fishmen in the game flashed across Chun Zhao's mind. They were very similar to the little fishmen. They were only 30 to 40 centimeters tall, about the size of an inferior demon. Their skin was smooth and dark blue. They had 4 limbs. They were also very strong at climbing. Chun Zhao saw them climb onto the pirate ship and start attacking the pirates. But they were too weak. Guret and her men started to fight back. Just then the little fishmen also climbed onto the ship. Peter and Bragg immediately took sticks and began to beat these little fishmen. Basically, with a swing of his stick, he could kill several of them. However, there were too many inferior manfish. More and more of them climbed onto the ship. These little manfish were ferocious and gluttonous. They didn't let their companions' corpses go either. Instead of attacking, they went to eat their companions' corpses. "Mr. Chun, hurry up and think of something." Prague finally asked Chun Zhao for help. Chun Zhao stood where he was, rubbing his chin in thought. The little fishmen didn't attack Chun Zhao. Instead, they kept attacking Prague and Pete. They weren't very smart, but they could feel that Chun Zhao wasn't easy to deal with. In fact, the number of little fishmen climbing onto the ship was actually quite small. Aman was in the sea, devouring them like crazy. These inferior manfish were like popcorn to him. They were small, but there were a lot of them. Aman could suck hundreds of them into his mouth when he opened it. Chun Zhao grabbed an inferior manfish and observed it. The aura of this little manfish was very weak, but there was a sense of familiarity. Aman was rarely interested in normal food. The only food he was interested in was either demonic crystals or a god of the mutants. A god of the mutants. Chun Zhao finally remembered. These little fishmen weren't demonized. They'd been corroded by the aura of the god of the mutants. Chun Zhao couldn't tell what they were originally, but they were definitely some kind of fish. Aman was a demon, so he was very interested in god of the mutants and mutated creatures. Chen Zhao was interested. He'd never tried devouring a god of the mutants. Chen Zhao activated the mouth of gluttony and swallowed the little fishman. The mouth of gluttony immediately felt a strong appetite. Chapter 1271. Peter and Prague were already exhausted. They were all complaining inside, wondering why Chen Zhao wasn't attacking yet. Seeing that it was about time, Chen Zhao squatted down and pressed his hands on the deck. Instantly, electricity was released. Peter and Prague were the first to scream. The strong electricity numbed their bodies first, causing them to fall to the ground. At the same time, all the fishmen on the deck were electrocuted too. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao's control of the voltage was still very accurate. It could numb Peter and Prague, but it wasn't fatal. It did a lot of damage to the fishmen. Their size meant their resistance to electricity. Many inferior manfish were killed on the spot, and some passed out from the electric shock. The two only felt like they were electrocuted for a moment. They quickly climbed back up. What just happened? Peter still didn't understand. Prague knew. She'd seen Chen Zhao control lightning and electricity before, so she wasn't surprised by this attack. Chen Zhao looked at his right palm. It was indeed inconvenient without lightning storm. His individual power was already strong enough, but his range was very limited. The demon god cannon could be considered a medium to small range attack. It was powerful, but its range was still very limited. Its accuracy couldn't compare to lightning storm either. It wasn't hard to create pure damage, especially if it had a large area of effect. It could be done with some explosives. With Chen Zhao's current connections and power, it really wasn't hard to get these things. But the problem was that if he threw these things out, he would be affected too. Therefore, other than large-scale damage, he also needed enough accuracy. Lightning Storm was the most perfect AoE skill to use. It covered a wide range, was accurate, controlled, and had decent damage. It basically matched Chen Zhao's 4 requirements for AoE attacks. If he had to point out a flaw, it would be the limitations of its usage. It could only be used in the headquarters. It could only be used for defense. It couldn't be used as an attack. For example, if Chen Zhao had Lightning Storm, the battle would be much easier. But Chen Zhao didn't have it. He couldn't help it. On the pirate ship, Gurette and her subordinates were even better than Chen Zhao's. Gurette had many people and a lot of heavy firepower. The fishmen that had climbed onto the pirate ship had already been cleaned up. Moreover, they were still attacking the surface of the sea, throwing grenades into the water. Meanwhile, on Chen Zhao's yacht, the mermen started climbing up again. Chen Zhao was also helpless about this situation. Unless Chen Zhao ignored Prague and Peter's lives and kept using the Eye of the Thunder, Chen Zhao could kill Rick and the other bandits, but Chen Zhao might kill the two of them because of that. Up until now, Chen Zhao had never killed an innocent person. He didn't even think that he had to kill an annoying young master like Peter. "You two step back. Leave the rest to me," Chen Zhao said. Prague retreated decisively while Peter looked at him in confusion. Shouldn't the more people the better? Suddenly, Peter saw Chen Zhao's feet float off the deck. Breaking free from gravity, Peter widened his eyes and stared at Chen Zhao in shock. What was going on? Suddenly, Peter remembered that Prague had mentioned that Chen Zhao was a spiritualist. And then there was the inexplicable electric shock just now. Everything was proving Chen Zhao's true identity. Dark magma started spreading around Chen Zhao. Peter stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Chen Zhao flew a few meters into the air. Then he tilted forward and landed on the water. The dark magma spread toward the surface of the sea. At the same time, it started churning wildly. All the mermen that approached the yacht were instantly minced. Chen Zhao shouted at Peter and Prague, "Start the yacht. Go forward." Not daring to delay, the two hurriedly started the yacht. Amon was also in the water under Chen Zhao's feet. One was above the water, and the other was below. Everything had been crushed by Chen Zhao and Amon. Just then Amon jumped out of the water. Chen Zhao landed on Amon's back and steadied himself. A beam of white light shot out of Chen Zhao's right arm. It pierced through the darkness and cleared the area hundreds of meters in front of him. Peter and Prague were both stunned. That monster had teamed up with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked at the pirate ship. The pressure on the ship suddenly increased. Even bigger monsters had boarded the ship. Those things were very similar to the legendary Naga. It had green scales, and its upper body resembled that of a fish, while its lower body resembled that of a human. Its body still retained many of the characteristics of a fish, and it had 4 thick limbs. Naga weren't created in the game. In fact, there were Naga sirens in Greek mythology. Chen Zhao immediately rushed toward the pirate ship. When Chen Zhao landed on the ship from the sky, everyone was stunned. Even Gurette didn't expect Chen Zhao to board her ship like this. Set sail, Chen Zhao said. I'll lead the way for you. With that, Chen Zhao dove into the battle again. The dark magma turned into long spears and stabbed into the water. Every time he stabbed a Naga, he would lift it up and then devour it through the mouth of gluttony. Gurette's subordinates had never seen such a terrifying and strange battle. They all stared at Chen Zhao dumbfounded. What are you waiting for? Gurette yelled. Set sail now. The 2 ships formed a straight line. The pirate ship was in front, and the yacht followed. Chen Zhao led the way and killed at the front. They were getting closer and closer to Nanqi Island, but the attacks were getting fiercer. Amon leaped out of the water again and shot a water bomb dozens of meters away in midair. Wherever the water bomb landed, everything was crushed. The power of his water bomb wasn't any weaker than a 10-kilogram TNT bomb. The pirates on the pirate ship and Peter and Prague on the yacht were all dumbfounded. This man and beast were like killing gods. Even an army of thousands of men and horses could not stop their footsteps. Prague, you already knew? Have you forgotten that I went missing for 3 days? Our paranormal society accidentally intruded into his territory and witnessed him and his men fighting a group of demons. You haven't seen a real demon with your own eyes, so you can't imagine how scary he is. Chen Zhao's eyes hardened. He suddenly remembered. Even if the small mermen and Naga could defeat the Navy fleet, they wouldn't be able to keep the ships on the sea. Chapter 1272. Suddenly, a bloody mouth burst out of the sea and bit Chen Zhao in midair. Caught off guard, Chen Zhao was pulled into the sea. Everyone turned pale with fright when they saw this scene. They didn't expect Chen Zhao, who had been so powerful just a moment ago, to fall into such a trap. What was that thing that just rushed out of the sea? It looked like a crocodile, but did a crocodile have horns? Also, wasn't that body a little bigger? The bloody mouth above the water was more than 10 meters wide. Even Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to escape after being bitten by that thing, right? But not long after, the giant crocodile surfaced, and its upper jaw was completely broken. Chen Zhao was standing on the crocodile's mouth. He looked unscathed, and his eyes scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Just then more crocodiles appeared around them. Not 3 to 5, not 30 to 50. There were hundreds of them. These crocodiles didn't just attack Chen Zhao. They also attacked the pirate ships and yachts. The pirate ship was fine. The pirates were armed, and their heavy firepower could barely kill 1 or 2 giant crocodiles. However, Peter and Prague on the yacht could do nothing. The yacht was knocked off course. Chen Zhao immediately rushed to the yacht. He saw that the bottom of the yacht was dented and damaged. Heartbroken, Chen Zhao immediately grabbed Peter and Prague. He lifted them into the air and threw them onto the pirate ship. The yacht had been severely damaged under the attack of the crocodiles. Chen Zhao was infuriated. The purpose of this trip was to look for treasures. But before he could earn any money, he had lost a yacht. Of course, Chen Zhao did not blame Gurette. This was because Gurette had reminded him many times before he left. This time, Chen Zhao and Gurette were working together. Chen Zhao's mission was to help Gurette land in the waters close to Nanqi Island. Even though the losses were more than expected, it was still Chen Zhao's own doing. Chen Zhao was going to drive the yacht himself. So, no matter what the loss was, he had to bear it himself. His only hope now was that the pirates' treasure on Nanqi Island could make up for his loss. But now was not the time for Chen Zhao to think too much. The giant crocodile began to attack the pirate ship. The pirate ship was sturdier than Chen Zhao's yacht. However, against such a group of giant crocodiles, the pirate ship would not be able to hold on for long. At this time, the pirate ship had already tilted, and several pirates slid from the tilted deck into the sea. Then, accompanied by a few screams, he was swallowed by the giant crocodile. No matter how hard Chen Zhao and Amon fought, they couldn't stop the crocodile from attacking the pirate ship. It couldn't be helped. There were just too many giant crocodiles. Chun, help! Guret lay prone at the stern of the sinking ship. He looked at Peter and Prague, who were also struggling to protect themselves. The other pirates were also having a hard time protecting themselves. They either slid down or grabbed onto the handrails. Gulai didn't expect Nanshi Island to be so terrifying. Everything was a mess. Her and Chen Zhao's plan had been ruined by the attack of these crocodiles. Chen Zhao first mentioned Guret, and then looked at Prague and Peter. He gritted his teeth and placed Guret on his back. Hold on tight. They swooped down at the same time and picked up Pete and Prague with both hands. Just then he heard Amon's cry for help. Even he could not face so many mutant giant crocodiles. Chen Zhao placed the three on the barbed warship in the water and returned to the battlefield. Chen Zhao couldn't abandon Amon for the treasure. Guret's face was pale. She'd never experienced such despair in her life. But she also felt lucky. If not for Chen Zhao, she would be dead for sure. Looking at her pirate ship and her subordinates, Guret sighed. She'd watched her subordinates die and her pirate ship sink. But there was nothing she could do. Prague and Peter were also scared. If not for Chen Zhao's help, they would definitely be eaten by the crocodiles. These crocodiles were much bigger than the sharks from before. Every one of them was more than 20 meters long. Their mouths, in particular, were ridiculously large. It was no wonder that Amon couldn't beat them. If there were only a dozen, Amon could crush them in all aspects. But it wasn't just a dozen but hundreds. But with Chen Zhao's participation, Amon's pressure was greatly reduced. Amon, you're in charge of devouring these monsters, Chen Zhao said. There was definitely a mutant god hidden on Nanshi Island. And this mutant god was definitely much stronger than the fallen source. After all, the fallen source couldn't create so many mutant monsters. This was like an army. In ancient times, it could definitely sweep through the world. Of course, if Amon could eat as much as he wanted, these mutant monsters would also be great nourishment. Of course, Amon didn't eat them all. He only devoured the mutant power in them. Once the mutant monsters were killed, Amon would immediately charge forward and devour them with power. Chen Zhao was so focused on killing that the entire sea turned blood red. At this moment, Guret, Peter and Prague, who were nestled at the stern of the warship, were all dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Especially Peter. Before today, he didn't believe that there was magic in this world. But now he had to believe it. Chen Zhao had killed more than 100 mutant crocodiles. But he didn't feel tired. This was the benefit of clear heaven and earth. Chen Zhao's small world could provide him with more magic power. At the same time, it could help him recover his magic power dozens of times faster. But if he continued such a high-intensity battle, his body would still feel tired. So Chen Zhao decided to change tactics. Chen Zhao jumped out of the water. He took out his zither and placed it between his legs. 12 light swords were unsheathed. In the past, when Chen Zhao used rhythm to control the swords, he still had to consider his magic power consumption. But now he didn't have to think at all. The mana consumption of the swords wasn't as fast as the recovery speed of the small world. Chen Zhao could play the zither until the end of time. The damage and killing speed of the swords were clearly much faster than physical combat. It was even faster than the mountain of knives formed from dark lava. The 12 light swords were like 12 death talismans. Although the 12 light swords might be damaged if they were to face some powerful opponents, they were still able to withstand the power of the swords. However, these mutant crocodiles were between strong and weak. They weren't strong or weak. Instead, they gave the light sword space to perform. The 12 swords darted in and out of the sea. Their killing efficiency was astounding. Chen Zhao had learned rhythm before ultimate transformation. Now he was in Shangqing and clear heaven and earth were clear. Chapter 1273. Amon changed again. But this time he didn't grow bigger. Instead, the wings under his belly grew bigger. They became extremely large, like a pair of wings growing from his belly. When Samuel's original body had summoned Chen Zhao had accidentally summoned Amon to hell. Chen Zhao had seen Amon's original body back then. Amon's original body could float in the air. Chen Zhao had always wondered if Amon was the so-called Kuan Peng. The more supernatural things Chen Zhao came into contact with, the more he believed in myths and legends. Now Amon was also growing toward his original body. Master, I can feel it. There's a strong aura of an alien god on that island. It's very strong. Amon's warning was within Chen Zhao's expectations. To be able to make so many creatures mutate, the original body must be on Nanqi Island. Are there any other mutated creatures in the surrounding waters? Many, but they're not strong. Devour all the mutated creatures, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao looked at his boat. It had been completely destroyed in the chaotic battle. Now, he could only see the bottom of the boat in the sea. Chen Zhao was in a bad mood. He had to go to Nanqi Island to find the treasure. Now Chen Zhao was invincible. He would kill whoever dared to stop him from finding the treasure. Chen Zhao went to the back of the boat. Because it wasn't big, Peter, Prague, and Guret didn't even have space to move. Guret, get on my back first. Carrying Guret and Peter and Prague, Chen Zhao flew to Nanqi Island. Mr. Chen, you're Superman, right? Peter looked at Chen Zhao with bright eyes. Chen Zhao was in a bad mood. He wasn't in the mood to answer Peter's question. Guret, it's up to you now. Chen Zhao had saved Guret not only because they knew each other and could be considered friends, but also because Guret was the key to this treasure hunt. She was the only person who had been to Nanqi Island. She'd said before that she and the original owner of the island, the big-bellied pirate family, were a bit pretentious. So, if Chen Zhao wanted to find the family's treasure, he could only rely on Guret. Chen, are there monsters on the island? Yes, I can feel the aura of monsters. There are many and they're very strong. Chen Zhao didn't hide it. The aura was also very heavy, so Chen Zhao couldn't find where the monster was hiding. Nanqi Island's area was not big. It was less than 10 square kilometers. It wasn't even as big as Chen Zhao's private land at Mirror Lake. Nanqi Island's terrain was relatively simple. Not far away, there was a large mountain that occupied most of the island. Most of the island was made of rocks, and the ground was very wet. It looked like it had just risen from the sea level. Guret's heart was heavy. Peter and Bragg's expressions became unnatural. But now they had no other choice. He could only follow beside Chen Zhao. Let's go. Gulai led the way. Mr. Chen, why don't you just fly us? That way, we'll be able to find the treasure faster. I don't care. Chen Zhao shrugged. Flying with 3 people did put a lot of pressure on Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao didn't know what to do. Carrying 3 people on the ground and carrying 3 people in the sky were 2 completely different concepts. He felt like he was flying with a tank in his hand. Guret also looked at him. She also thought that it was a good idea. If a monster attacks later, I can only throw you down, Chen Zhao said. Are you willing? Never mind then. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, the 3 immediately understood. If they encountered a monster with Chen Zhao's strength, he would definitely be fine. But if the 3 of them faced a monster, they would definitely die. Not to mention anything else, Chen Zhao would definitely throw them down when he fought a monster. If they fell from the sky, they would definitely die. To be honest, after arriving at Nanqi Island, the alien god's aura was much stronger than before. If this aura covered the entire island, Chen Zhao had to be careful. Such a powerful aura was probably 100 times stronger than the fallen source, right? So if something happened, Chen Zhao would also go all out. He could barely protect the 3 on the ground. But if they flew into the sky, it would be even more difficult. Chen Zhao would rather be safe and approach the location of the treasure slowly instead of charging around recklessly. Guret could vaguely sense Chen Zhao's expression. She also felt the pressure from Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao had never been so serious before. When Chen Zhao had dealt with the 3-headed dragon, he had still been as casual as before. But this time, Chen Zhao was actually so serious. Guret could only vaguely sense it. In fact, Chen Zhao had already used one of his trump cards. 10,000 spells return to 1. 10,000 spells return to 1 was one of Chen Zhao's strongest trump cards. But when Chen Zhao didn't attack, it gave off the feeling that it was the most ordinary. If one didn't face Chen Zhao directly, they definitely wouldn't understand how terrifying 10,000 spells return to 1 was. To be honest, I'm really curious how the big-bellied family lives on Nanchi Island. The island spends half of its time in the water. They can't be in the water too, right? Guret chuckled. What do you think of Nanchi Island's geology? Chen Zhao frowned and thought for a few minutes. What does this have to do with geology? The main structure of the island is Kosi granite, which has very good impermeability. What Miss Guret means is that the family built their home under the rock stratum. That way, if the island sinks into the water, there won't be any problems as long as it's sealed well. Chen Zhao suddenly understood. No wonder. There were no buildings or even plants on the island. It didn't seem like people had lived here before. So it was to dig a hole and build a base underground. That made sense. When the big-bellied family stole the gold, it was less than a week before Nanchi Island sank. Their family thought that as long as Nanchi Island dived into the sea, even the Navy wouldn't be able to do anything to them. But they underestimated Citibank's determination and anger. The Navy appeared near Nanchi Island the next day and launched an attack on the island. Chen Zhao looked around. Because there was a lot of mud here, he couldn't tell that the island had been attacked. First there was a large-scale bombing, then the Navy landed. After Nanchi Island was attacked, the big-bellied family couldn't fight back at all. Then the biggest change happened. The demonic seal they'd been guarding for centuries was destroyed. The family and the Navy on the island were all destroyed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.